This is the Carver Select Board meeting of March 16th, 2021. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I got one. I took Rick's.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would someone like to read the community prayer?
I'll take care of it. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who we provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. Especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, and that they may discover the fullness of joy and of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've reached a point of citizens' participation. Is there anyone here, citizen, who would like to participate? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Yes, sir. And if you'll pull the mic up real close so people can hear you at home.
Okay. That good?
That's great. Thank you.
Mike Palomeri, 164 Plymouth Street, Carver, Mass. I'll try to keep it brief. My issue that I'd like to talk about is with the North Carver water pipe, the Plymouth Street water pipe extension. My understanding, based on a conversation I had with the town on 11/12/2020, is those of us whose wells have tested positive for 1,4-dioxane are not paying any betterment, hookup, or switchover fees to the North Carver Water District water supply from our existing wells. I have a question. I know it can't be answered, but to debate, to think about is what about other homes that are in the known contaminated plume area who have not had their private wells test positive, but are right there on the cusp, maybe a house next door, a test well, etc. What about them? Are they going to have their houses hooked up to the North Carver Water District pipeline, should it be approved? Or are they not going to? Do they have to pay a betterment and all the hookup fees? I don't think they should. I think it should be hooked up at no cost to them. In my opinion, it's not an educated opinion, but being a plumber and a pipe fitter and have built systems like this, it's only a matter of time before their well does test positive if we keep on testing. That said, houses that might be out of this plume area or contaminated area, if the pipe goes in front of them, will there at least be a branch and a curb stop available so that down the road, should it be a problem, or if they choose to hook up to this pipeline, will there at least be that left off? To me, it makes no fiscal sense, no matter who's paying for it, to go blowing by a home and not leave at least a curb stop, because every time you want to hook up, you're going to have to dig up the pipe, put in a branch T, and then install the valve. So I think it all should be done now and not wait. Be proactive. If we are fortunate enough to have the Plymouth Street water line extension pass at town meeting, I would urge the town to have a meeting with the property owners that will be affected by this, that will be hooked up to it, so that we can get more information from it. And I think that we should be notified by certified mail so that we know of a meeting, instead of trying to find out through Facebook and website and everything Carver and all that stuff. I think that's very important, the communication. And lastly, when I read the DEP town agreement, I believe it's on page 6, item 10, or page 5, item 10, the agreement between DEP and the town, if the pipe is not funded at town meeting, I don't believe the intent is to continue forever, bottled water being the solution. It does say to find another solution, and then they listed out 1 or 2 items. I don't know, I think it was reverse osmosis, filtering, or anything else. I also don't believe that there's really no easy way to filter 1,4-dioxane from what I believe. So I think that has to be made very public, that there's going to have to be another solution found should this not pass. And I thank you very much for your time and listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Palmieri.
Thank you, Mr. Palmieri. Madam Chairwoman, can I just make
Mr. Bell?
one recommendation? Mr. Palmieri, your notes that you used for that, the notes that you used for your recommendations of what the town should do, can you get a copy to the town administrator so we can put those to our specialist that's building them?
I will, it's chicken scratch, I will write something up.
Yeah, if you could, just because having a professional give
Yeah.
recommendations
Also-
holds highly on me,
Good for the minutes of the meeting, too.
Yeah,
so.
it was excellent.
Can I do that, like?
Yeah, later, later on, thank you.
Yep, good suggestion. Thank you, sir, appreciate it. Anyone else? Mrs. Ferrand?
Donna Foran, 27-8 South Meadow Village.
You use the mic, pull the mic real close so people at home can hear you. Thanks.
27-8 South Meadow Village. I just want to take the opportunity, as a resident, not as a member of any committee in this town, but I wanted to take the opportunity to just let you know a couple of instances where I've had to work with Mr. LaFawn. And I come to this board to tell you that I've had some difficult conversations, I've had some difficult situations, but he's always been there to listen to me, respond to me respectfully. If we disagree upon something, we've always been able to walk away and disagree to be friendly about it. So I just wanted just to give you the opportunity, and some of the things that I've had to deal with have been very, very difficult. And, but he's always been there to answer my telephone call, you know, if I called, and I appreciate that. As being a member of a committee, it's awfully nice to have someone that can listen to you. So I just wanted just to bring that forth to the committee. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ferrand.
Thank you, Donna, that was very nice of you. Did you come out just for that? Because I'd be very impressed if you did. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
The next item on the agenda is discussion and possible vote on the Conservation Commission warrant article bylaw amendment. I think that's in your packet, and we have with us here tonight Mr. Moore, who's the chair of the commission. In looking this over, I noticed that he took each and every one of our comments to heart the last time he was in, and the bylaw has been amended to include those. Do any board members have any further questions or amendments that you'd like to see to this? Questions for Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Bogart?
I just noticed an easy typo on page 9. In 9241, section 7, it still references the Board of Selectmen instead of the Select Board. So if it's gonna,
9-2.
on page 9, here, let me show you. So many numbers. Yeah. And then my other question was, on page 2, when the bold print, you know, by the issuance of a permit / order of conditions, is the word permit staying in there? Because that would affect a different article that we'll be bringing up with membership on different committees that can issue permits. So if the word permit is taken out of this bylaw, we may need to revise one of the future warrant articles.
If I can address that, so that was one of my issues.
Yeah.
And I asked Mr. Moore to leave the word permit in there because
Okay.
no one, unless you're on the Conservation Commission, very few people know what an order of conditions means.
Right.
And it's a fancy word for permit.
Good, so the bold is staying, permit slash,
Correct. Yep.
great.
I do want to add that
Please.
where we had the chart, the first chart that indicated the fee structure, and Mr. Belvin, I believe you just asked about that. That is the state mandated fee structure. So instead of putting the chart into the actual bylaw, what we did instead was put the URL for directing you directly to the state, the Commonwealth site with that fee structure. That way, if the Commonwealth changes the fee structure in the future, we don't have to come back and change the bylaw. The link will reflect whatever new fees the state has us charge.
That was smart, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, Mr.
Credit where
Belvin.
credit's due. Deb Deneen suggested that after
Ah.
she found it on the mass.gov site. So
Okay.
credit where
Amen.
credit's due.
Mr. Belvin.
Just with that, there was actually an issue with the state Department of Children and Family Services. They changed their phone number in it, and no one knew they changed the phone number. I think I want to make that clear. We may have the same issue, is that URL may not be the same in coming years. If they change it, they may change the URL, so then it wouldn't be accurate.
That's always the choice. I mean, you.
So,
the-
I'd personally rather see the actual chart that says how much the fees are, instead of a link. Like I said, when we go to town meeting and we say, well, you can go to URL and look at the fees for it, and I understand you say government mandated, but I'd kind of like to see what those fees are, so.
Well, what you run into there is if in fact the fee structure changes in the Commonwealth a week after we have town meeting, then we go 51 weeks with our bylaw being incorrect. Because we would have to charge what the Commonwealth fee structure is.
And maybe change the wording that says that we'll follow whatever the state mandated fee structure is. And then that covers us forever. You just have it, here you go, this is what the fee structure is, but I think people should be able to see the fee structure. Especially at town meeting, because we're gonna be visual, and so people can actually see what it is.
Well, this has already been submitted.
I know that, but I'm just, like I said, possible change at town meeting, just so people can know what's going on.
We'll see what happens. I think that the URL, I mean, we've put in other URLs for different things, and we have to take the chance that it stays what it is.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments or further amendments? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to recommend this bylaw change to town meeting?
Make this motion to accept the bylaw as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion made and second. Any further discussion? Mr. Belvin?
I still want to make this clear, is that this bylaw allows, by law, agriculture, all right, to do their maintenance on their properties. What it doesn't allow is the regular resident to do regular maintenance on their property, or trimming or whatnot. So we're basically, the ugly stepchild is being a resident, because we got to get permission from the Conservation Commission to do maintenance or take a shrub up or cut a tree down. We got to get permission first, but the agriculture industry doesn't have to. So I have an issue with that.
That's state law.
Yeah.
That's not our bylaw. Both the 100-foot buffer that residents have to adhere to is state law, so is the agricultural exemption. So all we're doing is repeating what the Commonwealth Wetlands bylaws state. So, I mean, we can't change them because it would be against what the state has mandated.
And that's correct. And one of the problems, I think, was it just last year when you tried to amend this again, that the agricultural exemptions were not in there? So, I mean, they have to be exempt. We're not giving them any additional exemptions, I don't think. And again, the 100-foot buffer is, that's a state thing too. We're a little more strict, so we're within 65 feet. Just my 2 cents. Okay.
Question.
Mrs. Bogart.
So you just said you don't think we're giving the agricultural people any extra exemption?
We're not, because
Right,
they...
so is that definitive? If she
It is.
think
and
we are?
No,
Oh,
it's definitive, and
Okay.
I was just being
Okay.
nice.
No,
It's definitive because Mr. Moore has cited 310 CMR 10.04.
Okay.
And 04 is just the agricultural exemptions,
So it's
period.
not a we think.
It's right in the regulations. It's pages and pages of things they can do without having permission, and things they have to come to the commission for, as long as it's in their farm plan, that sort of thing. So it's quite a list. So, but that's 10.04. That's straight out of state
So
regulations.
not a thing. Okay, and then question for, as I was reading it again, then kind of going on what Bob says. So when it says destruction of plant life, including the cutting of trees, shrubs, flowers, or grasses, does that come from the state? Because I was thinking, like, if someone has to tear up their grass and hydro seed their lawn, would they, does that count? Like, is that state mandated, or is that town added? Because, like, I just had concerns that this got, like, really specific, because then you guys are gonna get inundated with permits and stuff.
The intent of the Commonwealth law is to not allow people to remove understory in order to replace it with a lawn.
So if
If-
someone
if
has
a-
to reseed their grass?
If a
like-
lawn exists, then they would still have to come to us and tell us what they're going to do if it was within the 100 feet.
And
the
that's
law-
state
the
law?
That's state law. It's altering, even replacing grass. But if it's already existing, and we have Google Earth to tell us if it is, then that's not an issue. But if we look down at from, and see photos that it's a forest, and someone says, I want a hydro seed from here down to my pond, to the pond's edge, we're not going to allow that because the state doesn't allow it.
So the bylaw was just incomplete, and we're just adding wording from the state's law?
We're taking the, we're being a little bit more specific as to what the definition of vista pruning means, because it does state clearly in the vista pruning definition from the Commonwealth that understory, which is everything underneath the canopy of the trees, cannot be altered.
Well, it says you can only alter 50%.
Actually, it's only 10% of, 50% of the understory, but
Yep.
on only 10% of the canopy.
Overstory. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so none of this is us making it stricter than the state bylaw, with the exception of the 65-foot, right? If
Right.
I understand, Sarah? Okay. So the restrictions are state, we just brought the footage in, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we put these in here primarily because we need people to be able to see them quickly. Because we can't expect people to go onto the state site.
Mm-hmm.
If they're in our town bylaws, hopefully when people are trying to do something, they'll come and look at the Carver bylaws and say, oh, I gotta stop doing something here. Or
Okay.
at least I've gotta ask permission.
And then other question, just out of curiosity, I remember somewhere it said variances are very rarely Granted, I just didn't, do you know how, like, what percentage of variances the commission grants?
I can't tell you that. I really don't have any
Okay.
idea. We don't really have that many requests for a variance.
Yeah, variances are intended to be granted only in rare and unusual cases. I was just curious, how many rare and unusual cases do you guys usually see?
Every case is different.
Yeah.
And it really, we go and we look, we have site visits, and we go and we look and we make a determination at how damaging we feel that could impact the wetlands.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know,
Just one more.
Mr. Belbin?
So I would like to see something in here that allows residents within the 100-foot or 65-foot barrier that have homes similar to mine, that we be given a, not have to go through the whole process of going to you guys and saying, hey, listen, we want to take out shrubs and we want to turn around and maybe trim some trees or whatnot in my area, all right, that are dangerous or whatnot, that we can go there with just a letter to you guys saying this is our intent to do it, all right, and show pictures or whatnot, and not have to turn around and go through the whole process of trying to get approval to do it, all right, but just to turn around and say, hey, this is what we intend on doing, and this is what we're going to be doing.
almost every case of the type of thing that you're talking about begins with an informal discussion at one of our meetings. And we judge whether we feel that it's worthy of a site visit. But if you come in and say, hey, I need to cut a tree that's a threat to my house, we're going to say, go right ahead. We don't need you to come in. But if you come in and say, I'm going to clear all the shrubs down by the cranberry bog and replace them with a garden, that's altering the root structure of everything that you're pulling out. The last 100 feet, the reason the laws are in the Commonwealth, the last 100 feet close to a wetland is where all of the root structures remove the minerals, and both good and bad, before the water reaches the wetland and therefore filters down through to the aquifer. So in effect, all we try to do in conservation, we have two main tasks. Number one, make sure that there's ample water for the agricultural industry in this town, because that's the lifeblood of this town. And number two, make sure the drinking water is safe for all the residents because they're on wells. That's what we do, and that's what these bylaws are intended to make better. So,
And
Thank
the
you.
wetlands are what keeps the groundwater clean.
yes, it is. And the surrounding 100 feet, that's why the state mandates that. Now, you may plant a garden and use organic fertilizer, and that's great. But your neighbor upstream may not, and that water gets into the ground and into your well. And that's what we're trying to prevent.
Anybody else? No? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. No further discussion. All in favor of recommending this article for the warrant, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, the ayes have it, 4-1-0 to recommend.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore. Next item is discussion and possible vote, Chapter 3 of our town bylaws, the town administrator bylaw. I think we have copies of that in our computers here, as well as online. I think we've been over this a number of times, and this is the retyped, amended version that we were looking for at our last meeting. Are there any further, if everyone's had a chance to look at this, are there any further items of discussion for this before we go to a vote?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Townsend?
just a one item. On the first page, under the job description, the one, item 3.3.1.3, I'm sorry, 3.3.1.2, where it talks about the term of the contract for the town administrator. I think there was some discussion at the last meeting, because it was proposed that it just be 3 years, and we talked about not binding us to that. I don't recall talking about a minimum term for the contract, and I'm just curious to see what the board feels about having a minimum 3-year term. I just wonder if we don't want to have a minimum 3-year term, and might just want to say, at no time shall the contract be more than 5 years. That way, if the select board wants to offer a shorter contract, we're free to offer it. I just wonder what the board thinks about that.
Any thoughts from anyone?
Yeah, I don't like the minimum less than 3 years. I mean,
I'm sorry, you don't like,
at no time shall a contract be less than 3 years, which, okay, I'm for that. Or more than 5 years. It shouldn't be more than 5 years. Which one are you talking? Are you talking?
I'm talking about that last sentence. I just wonder if we might want to consider changing the sentence
Less
to, at no time shall a contract be less than at no time shall a contract be more than 5 years.
he's suggesting we take out be
and-
less than
And not
3
have
years.
any minimum.
Yeah, I'm for that.
Anyone else? Mrs. Bogart?
I am fine with that too. Would you suggest a different minimum or just totally open-ended to 5 years?
I just don't think there should be a minimum. That way, the select board is free to offer whatever contract that select board thinks they should offer.
Mr. Hoffman?
What was in the past as far as contracts for town administrators? Was there a minimum, or how did we decide on?
Mr. LaFawn, you may recall
Actually,
better.
it was an indefinite appointment,
Yeah.
which, in the contracts that were negotiated had been for 5 years. And I think the intent is to clarify or eliminate, indefinite can be misconstrued,
There
so.
was never a year, a number?
No, there was never a specific either, well, again, and up to, presumably somebody could be in office until terminated, could be 10 years or 12 years, so there really wasn't anything defined. So it's, again, it's, at this point, fairly open to how you choose to see it.
Madam Chairwoman?
Mr. Belvin?
My thought process on this is I'd rather see a 3-year contract and then do another 3-year contract. I don't like this, oh, we'll extend it a year, we'll go back to renegotiate it for a year, we renegotiate it for another year and do that. I don't like that. I like, you got a contract for 3 years, it's 3 years. So this allows us to do up to 5 years. All right, so that's my thought process.
So on that point, this does say the contract is subject to extension only in the last year of the contract. So that would not be, you wouldn't be allowed to renegotiate it every year, as we did on occasion in the past.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, no, but that
Right.
is what it said. What,
Right,
this is
I know
agreeing
that.
with you.
Right.
So what's the, Mr. Hoffman?
So Bob, I have a question. So you're
Yes.
saying a minimum 3-year contract?
Well, that's what-
Or a 3-year contract?
That's what I would prefer to have, saying that we have a contract with you for 3 years. All right, the last year, we can turn around and start talking about negotiations for another 3 years. I mean, that's,
A 3-year contract is what you're recommending?
yeah, but I mean, the way this is here, I mean, it's 5 years. I'm okay, I'm amenable to that because it says up to 5 years. So we could do a 3-year, we could do a 4-year, we could do a 5-year. All right, so, like I said, my feeling is if we ever got a new town administrator in here, is that would be a 3-year contract, all right, see how things go, all right, and then go ahead and move on and say, okay, do we do another 3 years, or how we want to handle this? If we like what's really going on, maybe we extend it to 4 years, or whatnot, depending on where things, if I'm even here then, but it allows whoever is here that flexibility, so.
I guess my question, what do other towns do? as far as when is a town administrator, is there is 3 year or?
It's kind of all over the place. There's no, again, you have indefinite, I know some are the same thing, up to 5. Some, there's no definition whatsoever. I know a lot of positions where there may be a charter, maybe, again, up to 5 years, or specifically a 3-year term. But once again, now you're contracting, and within a contract, you make those accommodations for 3 years, or what happens in terms of rollover after X amount of years. So it's not like there's not like I can't point to one and say that's how it's done. It's, you know.
I guess there are arguments to both sides, where you don't want to lock in too many years in case something happens and you don't like it, you know.
Yeah.
You don't want to get stuck with it.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Townsend?
If I could just, I guess my thought process was here that, again, I'm not against a 3-year contract or anything. We don't know what the circumstances might be in the future, and there might be a circumstance when you want to offer somebody a 2-year contract for whatever reason. And I'm just looking to not bind future select boards. That was my only thought process here in removing that one item, that's all.
All right, I appreciate that. So is that a motion, Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, I would-
You'd like to change this to, at no time shall a contract be more than 5 years?
Yes, I would change that last sentence to read, "At no time shall a contract be more than 5 years." Absolutely.
Actually, it's the next to last sentence.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's correct.
Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Any further discussion?
No, I guess
This is just on the amendment.
yeah, no, I know. I think it could be good, because are you really gonna get a town administrator who's gonna come in here and negotiate a 8-month contract for himself? You're probably not gonna get that short of one, but the administrator might be open to a 2-year or something. So I like his idea.
Very good. Mr. Belbin?
Is there any state law that says that contracts have to be, cannot be a certain length? Is there anything that says that?
Not in state law, no. It would be how it's set up in an individual community.
Okay.
So
Thank
again,
you.
some towns, there's no parameters whatsoever, but usually towns with an act or charter have very specific requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is just a motion on the amendment to strike less than 3 years or. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the amendment passes so that sentence now reads, "At no time shall a contract be more than 5 years." Is there a motion on the bylaw itself?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. There's been a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion?
I found typos.
Mrs. Bogart?
Okay, so,
Typos, you say?
yeah.
Eagle eye.
So 3.3.2.1 says professional experience shall include at least 3 and then 93. So there's that one.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Jen, you want to throw that one at me again?
Yeah, I can give you this after too, but 3.3.2.1, when it says experience shall be at least 3, but then it says 93 instead, the 9 should be a parentheses.
Oh, I see. That's looking for a lot of experience.
Yeah. I mean, and then 3.3.2.3, there's 2 of them. So the first one should be 3.3.2.2.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, then in 3.4.3.1, third line, it says, but not let than once a year. I believe it should be less than once a year.
Well, I'm sorry, Jen, what section is that?
3.4.3.1. The third line says, but not let than once a year. And it should be less. Are we done with that one? I got one more. Okay, then 3.4.5.6, all these numbers. Okay, so are we at 3, 4, 5, 6?
Yes.
Okay. It says, and other votes of the town meeting and coats of the select board. So that should be votes of the select board. And that's it.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to recommend this bylaw as amended?
I'll make a motion to recommend it as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of recommending this bylaw to town meeting as amended?
But it won't be on this town meeting, right? Because it's not a warrant article? Or can we get it on this town meeting?
Mr. LaFawn?
You know, it's, my understanding is that it's for this town meeting.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my understanding.
Right.
Okay, I just didn't see an article number for it, but
I think there's a placeholder.
great, let's do it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Passes 5-0 to recommend this article to town meeting. The next item is discussion on any items pertaining to the North Carver water line extension that are necessary to complete the project. This would include timelines, finance, tie-ins, and any other items necessary to bring water to the homes. Mr. LaFawn?
Start.
I'm glad you waited with us, Mr. Palmieri.
Yes, as some of these things the board's already aware of, but the bids, this was open last week and ranged between $353,000 and $573,000. This week, I believe actually it's Thursday morning, Kevin Forg and I are meeting with, or at least discussing with Prime Engineering, the various qualifications of the low bidder to make sure they're analyzing that carefully. The second lowest bidder was on the underside of $400,000, so reasonably close. The other point that actually speaks to Mr. Palmieri's question is that health agent is actually in discussions with DEP. DEP is doing some homework themselves as to logistics for tie-ins. Obviously, there are a number of properties that the town needs to tie in, and then there is other properties that show no impact. And how are those going to be treated by the town? As of right now, we're presuming to have enough funding available or propose enough funding in the article that would offer the town the ability to tie in those residents. Ultimately, that's going to be a policy decision by the town, presumably this board, as to how best to approach that. But I think at least ensuring that we have a financial proposal to the town that would accommodate that, I think is important. Within the next few business days, I also expect to have from Prime Engineering an estimate of what it would cost for tie-ins. So that would certainly help our deliberation on what needs to go in the article, and also it might drive your decision in terms of how you want to approach tie-ins for other homes.
Quick question before you.
Sure, yep.
For the tie-ins, that quote that you're gonna get, that's just for the affected houses?
Well, we're looking for a price on a tie-in, an average cost of a tie-in. Now, obviously, depending on the distance from the road, there are some towns, some homes that would be more expensive than others, but just in general, is this a $10,000 endeavor per home? Is it $6,000? I don't know the answer. So we're looking for more or less an average cost for a tie-in from Prime Engineering.
Because I guess one of the questions I had, and I don't know if we can discuss with Mr. Palmieri's, one of the points he brought up, to do it being proactive versus having to do that afterwards when you dig up everything, is that?
Well, I think the concern or the question is that we may have, let's say for the sake of argument, 10 of those properties that are being tested quarterly don't want to have town water. They don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay for water. They light their private well. Certainly would have to give the town permission to go on their property or to make provisions for that. So I mean, we can only address those homes that want to work with us to do so. I'm not sure, did I answer the question, Jim, or?
Yeah, I guess and maybe I'm not as knowledgeable on this, but say if I own the house and I didn't want to get connected to the town, then I sold the house, would the person that buys from me have the option, or is it's gonna take a whole big
I think they'd have
to do that?
I would say they'd have the option, and then this is just off the cuff here, But at that point, the town wouldn't have a responsibility to provide for the tie-in at the town's expense. In my own opinion, the homeowner that's there now would be making a decision as to how they want to proceed. Again, that's just my opinion. That's obviously a discussion for this board at another date, but I think there has to be some end date. You know, we can't have, it's been suggested, and not by me, but there needs to, whether it's 6 months or a year from the time this is funded and installed, that residents would have an ability within a certain time frame to let the town, for the town to know that they're interested in tying in. Because, as I said, this can't go on forever. This can't go 2 or 3, 4 years down the road. The town has to have some closure, both from an operational standpoint and from a financial standpoint. At some point, we have to know, you know, what it's going to cost, how much we need to borrow, how much we don't need to borrow, so that we can deal with rescinding any excess that we don't need.
How many homes in all are affected?
There's 19 that are being tested right now on a quarterly basis, and I believe there's 5. 5? I look at Sarah.
I think it's 5.
I think it's
that-
5
that are
impacted.
where the 1,4-dioxane was detected. Now, I guess so I wanted that to be clear. There are 19 homes being detected. Not all of them,
Tested.
I mean, that have been tested, excuse me. Not all of them have had 1,4-dioxane detected in them. 4 or 5, I'm pretty sure it's 5, have been detected. And I guess my question is, yeah, so I guess that's the question. Are we planning to, we are currently testing all 19, and how long is that going to go on? I guess that determines how long these residents have to decide whether they want to tie in or not.
Well, that's correct, because once the water line is installed, the town will not have an obligation to be testing these after a certain period of time. It's not like the town's going to be testing these forever, and in, 10 years down the road, a resident decides, there's some impact and they want to tie in. I mean, that obviously can't happen. There has to be some approach.
Well, they could tie in, but the town wouldn't be paying for it.
Exactly,
Right.
that's correct.
So who determines that time period in which these 19 households have a chance to make that decision? Is that a
would be
DEP decision?
That would be your decision. Correct.
Sorry?
That would be your decision,
Would be our decision.
yes.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman.
Mr. Belvin?
My thought process on this is that we bring the water line down, we put branches to each house off the street, cap them there. If they want to tap in, they can tap in at a later date, that's fine. The ones that need it, we give it to them. If people want it, they can have it. If they don't want it, at least we're not going to go out and start ripping apart the road to tie in another house later down the road. Because we know that that's an area of a target area. So my feeling is that's what we do, and that way it protects us from having to rip the road again to piecemeal people years down the road, but it also allows that person that flexibility that if they sell the house and someone else wants to tie in, it's a lot less tie-in costs.
So I think for the purposes of seeking an appropriation, we have to at least assume that the majority or all of these properties are going to need to be tied in the short term, again, for the purposes of an appropriation. Whether or not that appropriation is necessary in the long run, well, we'll find that out. But it can't be, as I say, it can't be open-ended.
Right.
How we want to approach it in terms of what, how and when that window closes, well, I think after we have an appropriation, I think that's a policy question at that point.
Madam Chair?
Yes, just one sec. Rick, is this when you want to bring up this draft article, or later on? For the Plymouth Street?
Whenever you like. To that point, it has been, one of the concerns we've had for quite some time is our ability to seek an appropriation, having enough time to plan for that, either in our capital plan or elsewhere. So we've known really for quite some time that this would probably have to be some sort of borrow. So what the draft article that I have, that I've submitted through Meg to our financial advisors for them to look at, is an article that would allow the town to bond for the water project, the library project, as well as the town hall project. Now, you see it's in an ABC menu format, so the town could choose to do one without the other. And I think that some of the conversation and some of the collective wisdom is moving in the direction of trying to at least do the water line in the library project, at the very least. And in doing so, it would probably make sense to also include the town hall exterior project. Although there's funds put aside and there's funds in the current capital plan that would probably get that project done entirely, it does allow for some funds to stay in the capital stabilization fund that can be used elsewhere at some other time during the year if necessary. The way it's structured right now is, again, the article would allow for borrowing of up to all three. How it's financed specifically becomes an internal question and issue based upon what we're advised by the town's financial advisor, whether it's house notes for a period of time or whether it lends itself to a long-term indebtedness. Some of that's going to depend upon how each option impacts the ability for the capital debt stabilization fund to fund it through the principal and interest and over what period of time, so that it doesn't destabilize, the longer-term plan. We've also been advised that right now borrowing money for a municipality the rates are really, really good. So it could be a really good time on many, many different levels. I know some of us have discussed that by the time we put enough funding aside through the normal capital plan for the library, it could be 2 or 3 years before we're actually getting that done. So this would seem to be a good opportunity to bundle some of these projects into one, keeping in mind it's not going to cost anybody any money in terms of additional tax dollars. This would be, again, paid from our stabilization fund.
And Mr. Lethon, when you said there's money in the
Capital debt stabilization
Thank you,
fund?
yes.
Yes,
for that project, you meant for the town hall project, correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
That is
Just
correct.
wanted to be clear. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you. I had asked for this item to be put on the agenda, and I did so because while we had the bid to bring the water line down the street, that's all we had, and I thought it was important that we make clear to those residents that need this water that we have funding, we have a funding mechanism set up to provide everything else they need to get the water from the street to their faucet.
Right.
And I think item A on the suggested article goes a long way toward doing that. So I think that's an excellent idea, but I think that's what this board needs to show. We need to show these people, these affected residents that need this water, that we are committed to not just bringing the water down the street, but getting it to their faucet. And
Without a betterment.
yes,
Without a betterment.
absolutely. And I think
Without a betterment?
without a betterment, and if whatever they have to do, whatever the tie-ins, if they have to destroy that existing well, then whatever needs to be done, we need to show that we have funding in place to get that accomplished. And I think item A here on this article goes a long way toward doing that. So
I would also just, as you see, remind the board, even though, again, a lot of this is reminding you what you already know, but we're supposed to seek funding prior to April 30th, which we'll obviously do at the annual town meeting on the 13th. And presuming it's funded, construction must begin by May 30th and completed by November 30th. I have a tough time foreseeing, this is to Mr. Palmieri's point, I have a tough time foreseeing that the town meeting not approving this overwhelmingly, if not unanimously. Between this board, the finance committee, and other, citizens, I can't imagine that would become a problem for us going forward.
And if I may, I just want to read that Part A to this proposed article. $600,000 for the installation of a water main on Plymouth Street and up to 19 property connections to comply with an administrative consent order with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Yeah. Do we want to, are you finished with this?
Yeah, I'm not proposing this as an article to be in its final form because
I know.
as I said, it's being, reviewed by the appropriate
I
legal
know,
authorities.
so that,
Right.
that could change, but I just wanted that out there.
You want to go first?
Mr. Hoffman?
Go, Bob.
I'd actually, if we're going to do this, I'd like it spelled out that all tie-in costs, and really say that it's going to be tie-in costs, decommissioning of the well, that these are actually itemized out, that this is what's going to happen, period, cut and dry. And the whole thing about how long do we offer this for, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's
That's-
not a
yeah.
town meeting call, I think that's
Yeah.
a policy call.
so I'd say as long as the line's going down, once we finish the project, it's on that person. I mean, we brought it through, and you get to pick and choose right then and there to hook it up. And if you choose not to hook it up, no problem. But once that flat top gets on, the blacktop, sorry, you're going to pay for it. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
I agree with what Bob and I think said, and I think that's where the connection part's important, that if we have connections for all 19 homes, that's why I'd asked how many we're in total we're looking at. I mean, only 19 homes, not 100.
Right.
As long as we provide the connection and Mr. Palmer, I forget what you said, a curb stop or some, so at least, right, so at least
Right.
the connections are there. And like Bob said, if the homeowner doesn't want to do it, fine. They decide to do it later, then it's up to them, but we
Right.
gave them,
But at least it's there.
right.
Exactly.
Which brings you to another question, the 600,000 that's in the proposal, would that cover 19 homes?
That's why Prime Engineering is giving us a firmer number on what to add to the current bid price of, again, 300, we'll call it 353,000, but it could be a little higher, but that's, so that's what we're looking as an accommodation. We're hoping that it's gonna be less than that once we get, a better number from Prime Engineering. But this is a number that we know will suffice.
So 600,000 would,
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah, so
Now,
perhaps,
again.
perhaps I
Prime-
shouldn't have read this
No,
because
no, I
it is
mean,
in real
as long as
draft
people
form,
understand
but
that this is a.
I think we're trying to price it higher than we hope
keep-
we'll need it.
No, and keeping in mind that, these bids were just open last week. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of evaluation of a bid. Usually, you don't have as tight a time frame. And even though we're complying with the consent order, and actually we're ahead of the schedule in the consent order, this is still a tight time frame for this type of project to get off the ground.
one other quick question.
Sure, please.
When the original bids were sent out, just curious why tie-ins weren't part of the bid?
I'd have to, my understanding is that, each home has its own dynamics. We don't know how many tie-ins were going to be necessary. We don't know how many tie-ins from a policy standpoint that, when you have a bid, you can't say between 4 or 5 and 19. You kind of have to have something more specific than that. So once we have an idea, once we have a good estimate from Prime Engineering as to what those costs may be, then we can make a decision as to whether we want to, go out and borrow for all those altogether, or we want to look at some sort of supplemental contract with the contractor who's awarded the bid. So there are options, but it's hard to, to build in an add alternate provision into a bid, that could be, again, between 5 and 19 tie-ins. It just really isn't a feasible way to bid something if you're a
The
contractor.
bid was just for the water line itself.
That is correct, right. So the additional funds that we need to include in the article are for the tie-ins, and again, whatever, you can make policy decisions later on, but we want to make sure we have enough funding in there to reasonably accommodate all 19 if they choose to tie in, and if, from a policy standpoint, that's what this board wants to do.
So realistically, the bid that went out could have been for 19 tie-ins, and then if we
It-
didn't need it.
That's my understanding, but I'm also hearing, I think, that each house is a different distance from, has a different, setup. I don't know, so I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would have been really hard to estimate.
Well, yeah,
Bid?
I think,
I don't,
obviously, for a contractor, there's money in here. So if you have you know, again, 10 of these residences that are being tested who don't want to tie in, well, you have a contractor that bid something based upon an expectation that's no longer real. So those would impact what a contractor's going to bid. You know, the less you know specifically, because we can't make people tie in. If we knew there was going to be 19, you could specifically bid that.
Couldn't the reverse have been done too? And I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding correctly,
go ahead.
but instead of bidding just for the water line, bid for the water line and 19 connections, and say it comes to X amount, and then 6 people don't want to, so obviously what was accepted, then we would only have to pay that much less. Whereas now we bid just for the water line, now we've got to increase that. Because I'm coming a different
Yeah,
way of life.
well, and again, I just think the challenge is that, you know, and I'm not a contractor, but when you put out a procurement, the more information you don't know, the more you're gonna end up paying. So when you bid something, a contractor wants to know, this is what I'm doing, not this, maybe that, or maybe this, so.
Even now, we don't know for sure how many people are gonna tie in. Are we gonna get a commitment before we go out to get is everybody gonna have to commit before we agree to tie in? We're not gonna get.
No, I'm not, if I hear what you're saying, and I might be coming from the other way too, we're going to need a commitment from a homeowner before we can't tie them in without their permission. I'm sorry, I know I misunderstood that, Jim.
Well, I mean,
Try that again on me.
The additional money we're gonna ask for, we're gonna have to have an idea of how many tie-ins we're gonna need.
Correct, but the additional money we're gonna ask for will presume all 19. But that doesn't mean all 19 are going to want to or are going to tie into the system.
Why didn't you just?
Well, I'm saying because a contractor wants to know what they're bidding on. So if you bid 19 and then you have only 10, well, that's 9 tie-ins, business they're not getting, that they expected to get when they bid. If they knew that it was only going to be 5 or 10, and that was definitive, well, then every contract is on the same playing field, and because sometimes a contractor will intend on putting more money into this part of a project rather than this part, based upon their subcontractors and their own experience. So you really have to be specific exactly what you want, so that everybody can be on the same playing field. And when a contractor bids, they want to know what they're bidding on, because 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 tie-ins, business they're not getting, would have impacted what they bid to begin with. So it's tricky, but I think, and if you don't do that, then your bids are going to be higher, because everybody has to assume, I guess, the worst, so to speak.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Townsend?
Not to continue on this, but just a quick question. Wouldn't it have made sense, at least in the bid process, though, to include the 19 curb stops? Because it would just seem to me that even if you have a home over there that doesn't need the water now, and 5 years from now, the plume changes, something changes, they do need it, there's so much extra work has to go in to put that curb stop in later. Wouldn't it make sense to have included all those curb stops in the water line while they're coming down the street?
Let me check on those details. I don't want to give you bad information. Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, just one
Mr.
last
Belbing?
thing. I understand why we did the bidding process just for the water line going in there. I understand, because if I was a business guy and I'm going to put a water line in, great, I'm going to put a water line, I know what that's my, what I'm going to be doing. Okay? But like Rick said, is that if I say, okay, we're going to build a contract with the town to tie in 19 people, and I get to the 5th person, and they're like, nah, I don't want it. No, I don't want it here now. All right, well, this guy has already paid for his employees to be there. He's already got that in his contract that he's going to do it. the town's gonna end up paying for it, so the town could end up paying more than what we really should, because a contract's a contract, and whether in that frame of that contract says that we're gonna pay this guy to do this work, and even if it's not done, he's still gonna get paid for it, in my opinion. And we don't wanna say, well, if this person doesn't, then you decrease this amount of money. I don't know any business guy that actually would do that. What I would like to see is a letter sent to all of the residents as a reminder that the water line is coming down. It is gonna go by your house. And if you're gonna we need to know if you're gonna tie in, please respond within 15 days or something like that, to say, hey, so we have an understanding, okay, fine, we have a preliminary one. It's not committing them, but it's just give us a good idea if you're really interested in it. We have to be proactive here, I think.
That's probably a good idea. I would just be careful about, 30 days, 60 days. I think that's, you can choose that time, not me.
Okay.
And again, I'm not sure that's certainly not on the agenda tonight for you to make that decision, but I think it's something to give some thought to. I think it's a good idea to give people as much knowledge about what's going on, those that are affected by it, but I think that's a good idea, but you might want to think about how we format that. I'll think about it, and I'm sure the board members will think about it, and maybe at your next meeting might be prepared to do something like that. I'm trying to be introspective as I speak here, so and I think after the fact, it may be a situation where if we're aware of we have 10 tie-ins, well, then it's very possible that the town can do a separate procurement just for that work. Now that we know what it is and where they are, people are in a position to bid on that specific job too. But like I say, I think your point is well taken. We have to have some sort of cutoff where people let us know what their intentions are.
Right, and also turn around and their response would actually, whether we do a form process and say, sign here allows the town to, or their agents to go out there and measure for tie-ins in case we turn around and it goes out to bid or whatnot, that those agents can go out there and from the companies and get a measurement to find out, all right, this is how long it's going to be, and they can calculate a good figure.
And I think to Mr. Palmieri's point, probably wouldn't hurt to have once town meeting is over, we have a meeting with residents, or at least a forum that they can attend with the town's engineering firm too, to have some conversation about how this would work.
I think that's an excellent idea.
That was actually Bob's idea, but
Yes.
I'll give it.
Okay. Is there anything else on this topic? Are you all set?
I don't have anything else at the moment, right? But I will get back to you with that information as to the curb stops.
Thank
What's
you.
the right terminology?
Yep.
We're all talking about the same thing.
I think we're talking about the same thing.
Okay.
It's Mr.
Yeah.
Palmieri.
Yes.
I've been biting my tongue, I know it's not the forum, but please, feel free to reach out. I can help facilitate a lot of these
Sure.
questions that come up.
Okay.
I'm really hoping our engineers have answers to this too. No offense to you, Mr. Palmer. So, in fact, I'm quite confident they do, so. But Ann, any questions, you or any other residents that you are aware of, please, if you could address them to me, I'll get you answers. And again, I'll get the board that answer on the curb cuts.
Thank you. Appreciate that. The next item for discussion and a possible vote is the planning of hiring a full-time administrator. I believe this was at your request, Mrs. Bogart?
Yep, so basically, I think we need to start the planning process of making someone in a position full-time. And like I've said before, I did the webinar with the MMA. They said it's hugely important. So I'm not prepared to, to have a whole process, but I think we need to start doing that. And actually, don't worry, it's not going to be like the marijuana one when I print you guys these massive packets. But I would love to send you guys the links to the massive packets that I found through the MMA and the MSA too. They have really detailed information on how to select a local government administrator, and Massachusetts has one too. So and seeing how 3 of us have never been in the process of hiring a full-time town administrator, I think we need to do our due diligence and read this kind of stuff and do it right. So with your interest, I would love to send this stuff out to you guys to look at and maybe think more about for next time. And if we want to talk about screening committee today or whatnot, that's great. And, using an outside firm too, but I think we've got to start making something official.
Okay, so just my thought on this is, I think it's a nice idea if you could send us all those links. As you said, there are 3 members who haven't been through that process. Does anyone else have any comments? Mr.
No, you go first.
Mr. Hoffman?
I guess my comment is.
Can you pull that mic a little closer there? Sorry.
I guess my comment is, obviously I'd love to get that link to, obviously I'm one of the 3 that have never been through this before. But I think that any decisions that are made should probably be made when the new board's elected. Just because that'll be the board that will make the, do the search committee and make the decisions and things like that. The board might stay the same, which is fine, but just in case it's not, I think maybe we should wait till that new board. And then first meeting, we jump right in. That's the first thing on the agenda, is to start that process. I just think it might be better, I don't know, just my feeling, that better, let's wait till the new board. We're only talking about another month.
3 weeks. Yeah.
So like a month, so just my thoughts on that. But definitely send the links out, that'd be
Yeah, you
great.
may need that much time because.
I'm sure I will.
It's a lot.
I'll send you a link to the webinar I took too, where they talked about it, because again, it was great and it was eye-opening. So, yeah, I don't know that you're gonna read all this in the next 2 weeks, but it's important to start. That was my point.
I can watch a webinar, that's good.
It's important, let's start, let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah. Mr. Townsend and then Mr. Belvin.
Thank you. A couple of things. I agree that I think this is best left to the new select board. It's only a month away, and I really don't think we should try to push our ideas on that select board. I would agree with Mr. Hoffman and suggest that it be an item on the agenda for that very first select board meeting of the new term. And one other thing that I think we should be talking about, and if this is not pertinent to this agenda item, please let me go and I'll stop talking about it. But I think we haven't really done an assessment of Mr. LaFont. We did that informal assessment, but we haven't done a formal assessment like we've always done in the past with town administrators. And I think we should try to get that done as quickly as possible. It's coming up on a year now, and I think that would be a valuable tool as we go forward in the selection process of a new town administrator. So I think that's something that we should work out how we want to do that and do that as quickly as possible. So those are my suggestions.
I appreciate that. Mr. Belvin?
All right, so I do have to say I've requested this before and was denied, but
There were extenuating circumstances, Mr. Belvin.
still, okay. So I think that we should set out a notice to residents for the screening committee, and if you want to be part of the screening committee, you start applying now. It's my opinion that we should start that process of getting people in here applications, because if we wait until April, I have no problem waiting for the next board to go ahead and do the process. But we can start it by just putting out the application process, so when we do talk about it on that first meeting, that we have a group of people that are interested in being part of the screening committee, all right, and that we can turn around and discuss that. I think we can also discuss how many people do we want on the screening committee? I mean, what is the average size? I mean, things like that we can discuss, because I don't think there's going to be any disagreement about the size of it unless you make it a 5-member screening committee, which I think isn't right. I'd like something a little bigger, because you need a vast demographics of people and experiences to be part of that screening committee. But I think we should start now, just getting the applications, doing that foundation work for the next board to come in here and do it. Like I said, we're not going to be hiring a town administrator here, all right, in our term right now, before election. But we can start that foundation work now, and that's what I want to see done. I want that foundation work done for the next select board. And, I mean, I'd like to know where everyone stands on how many people would they want on a screening committee for a search committee for a town administrator, and what do you guys think?
Well, I think that my opinion is, and I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think that also should wait until after the election. I think it's sort of presumptuous of us to assume that we're going to be here. Last year, a candidate won by write-in vote, so congratulations. So we don't know what's going to happen, and it's a little presumptuous. And also, I guess, my 2 cents, I feel like it would be really nice to get through town meeting. Our interim TA has prepared a budget for us, and I just think it feels a little inappropriate to turn right around and say, thanks. You know, we're off on going down another road now. We have a lot to do to get through this town meeting. And I think it's just much more appropriate to wait. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Madam Chair?
Mr. Belvin?
So, to go on with what I was saying here is that I want to see us, I really would like to know where everyone stands on how many people would you want on the screening committee. I mean, I'm thinking 8 to 12 range for me. That's my thought process. And also with this is that I want to make it clear to the people is that through the discussions with Rick, no matter what happens with the screening committee, Rick's going to be one of the finalists no matter what. We had already decided that. So he's already going to be in the running no matter what.
When was that decided?
Yeah, who's we?
Huh? We decided that when we had discussions with Rick.
We did?
Was that in the contract, Bob?
I don't think it's in the contract, but I think that we did talk about that he would be part of the finalists.
We may have. I don't recall, but we may have.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at here is, do people want to take a vote on the screening committee tonight? Or do we want to wait on that as well as voting on the rest of this process until after town meeting? Yes, Mr. Hoppe?
I like Bob's idea about having people send in applications now, but what I would like to do is, I would like the new board to start the process for the search committee. So that, like, again, that first meeting, whatever the date will be of that, that's the day we discuss the formation of a search committee. I just don't think it's right for this board. Again, I don't know who's gonna be on the new board. It could be the same, it could be different. But if you're a new board member and all of a sudden the old board decided how many people were on that
Yeah.
search committee, I'd be offended by that.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, I'm just trying to play, again, upfront and honest with everybody about that. But I do agree with Bob on the application process. We can start that now. Because that's a month.
Mhm.
So let's give people, 4 weeks to express their interest. And from there, the new board will have a whole list of applicants that want to do that, so I think,
I think that's a good idea.
I'm sorry?
I said I think that's a good idea as well.
Okay, yep. Mrs. Pogar?
Yeah, again, I'm going to implore you guys, I wish I had sent the links before, but I will send you the links. Again, in the webinar, they talk about what search or screening committees could comprise of and what other towns used. And some of them, they said you want to have it big enough, but not too big because then it's difficult. And some towns included like the police chief and other town employees. It wasn't all citizens. So I think my intent tonight was to start the conversation, start everybody thinking on it. You know, have this, we are in this position right now. So we should think about it. We can wait till after the election to start taking serious action, but we are the board now. So let's start thinking of the search committee. Maybe not develop the application tonight, but next meeting, let's have really put in some thought and done the research and read stuff so we make an educated decision.
So are you suggesting, so Mr. Hoffman was suggesting we send out letters to the residents and on Mr.
Yeah.
Belbin's suggestion, asking people if they would be interested in serving on this. Are you suggesting we hold off on that?
I say we not compose that letter or agree for that letter tonight until next time, until we figure out how many residents we may want.
Okay.
So until we decide, you know, this really seems like it, because I think it's great. You know me, I'm all about citizen participation. But let's give the makeup of the committee a little more thought. So let's not take any action tonight, but let's do some information collecting for next time. So,
Mr. Hoffman?
The only problem I have with that is, again, and this is my suggestion, what everyone else believes, but I believe the new board should set the parameters of the search committee. I love Bob's idea. Let's start now on getting people interested and finding out who is interested. Because if not, we have to send out the invitations in a month when the new board's on, and we just lost a month of trying to gain all those people. So, I mean, I don't think we have to say there's gonna be a 7-man or 12-man or 20-man. There'll be a search committee coming in the near future.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in serving on it? Plain and simple.
okay.
And then from there, we can, after the first
Sure.
meeting, say, okay, the new board decided it's gonna be a X amount. And we'll already have maybe 30, maybe 100 applicants, we don't know,
Okay,
maybe 4.
yeah.
Is everyone amenable to that?
That sounds good.
We have our administrators, people send out a letter and,
Madam
Well,
Chair?
not
Just,
Mr. Townsend.
I just, who are we sending out a letter to? I mean, I would prefer to see if we're going to have citizens on the search committee, and I understand we haven't set any of those parameters, but I would like to see it open to anybody in town who would be interested in serving on the search committee. I don't want to send out letters to certain people inviting them to be on the search
no,
committee.
You're right. I'm actually was thinking of an open letter. I don't know what you were thinking of, Mr.
Oh,
Belbin.
okay, or something on the website, or
Something on the
I
web.
want it open to anybody in town who's interested
Something
in
we could send
being
to the
part of that search
newspaper.
committee.
Or,
That's my thought process, was a notice to send out, like I said, it'd be in the newspaper, it'd be in our website, like I said, and for that. And I just want to read, this was my note that I took, and it said, if at any time the select board determines the posting of a full-time town administrator is needed, a 3-month notice will be given to the interim town administrator. At that time, the interim town administrator will be allowed to apply. That was my notes from our discussions
Yeah, but,
with them. So maybe I was wrong how I
yeah,
misspoke
but
for that.
allowed to
That's a little
apply
different.
is,
Right, it is. So I think I might have misspoke on
well, again, I have,
on how it
I don't
was.
have my notes with me, but I have,
I made sure I wrote them down.
no, it's
Easy
good.
access.
It's good that you did write it down, yeah.
So, just to cover myself, I mean, so,
So let's see if we can get this straight and move on. So we're suggesting that our administrative folks write up a letter for us that will eventually be, in short order, go out on the website, be sent to the newspaper, maybe Area 58. Carver Reporter will put it online as well, just inviting residents so that we're not targeting anybody in particular.
right.
Is that sort of the consensus here?
Can we see the wording before it's actually published?
I think that's a
Yeah.
good idea, but they could meet with us individually and,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
unless there's a reason to have a special meeting for it.
I think we call it a notice versus a letter.
Yeah, notice.
Sorry?
A notice.
And I keep saying
A
letter,
notice.
I mean notice,
Yeah.
right, it's sort of a
Yeah.
public notice, exactly. That's your thought as well.
Oh, yeah, most of them. That was my original. If I said letter, I'm sorry. I just,
No, you said that.
Yeah,
all
I
right,
kept
but,
Seeing the
a
notice and
notice.
saying letter, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
just one last thing with that is that I'd like those to be specific, that it goes to the Board of Selectmen, that we have one secretary opens all of them that come in for that, and that a copy of them be given to all of us, that we all have a copy of who's applying for it. I'd like to see that, all right?
Sounds good. Everybody okay with that? Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin. Thank you, everybody.
See, guys, we're starting the conversation.
Okay. And then all SBs.
Can't wait for that webinar, Joe.
That was really good, and it got me psyched on being here. I mean, newbies, I wish you watched it. It was like, one of the most important things a select board member can do is hire a town administrator. Yes, I was elected at the right time. I get to be important.
And just a point, 4 of us have never hired a full-time a permanent town administrator, not, well, I think Sarah's the only one that was involved in hiring the full-time town
Actually, you
administrator.
know,
Well, maybe
to
I
be
can
honest,
help in a
I was
search committee
actually
for you.
an employee at the time and a select board member, so I wasn't allowed to vote.
So none of us.
Straight
have-
Guys, we got so much work to do.
But I was here for the whole process.
Okay.
I'm going to ask for a 2-minute brief adjournment
Okay,
before we tackle these warrant articles.
no problem.
I just want the lights on.
Yeah, I was going to say, why aren't the lights on?
They just. Guess we're back. We're back. Discussion and possible vote of the annual town meeting warrant article recommendations. My notes tell me we started tabling everything at Article 6.
Madam Chair? Just want to apologize for not being there at that meeting. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the time from work.
Oh,
but
I know. I let the
appreciate-
board know.
I appreciate you guys holding off on some of these articles for voting for me to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. Okay, so let's start with Article 6. Mr. LaFawn,
I've been informed that Article 3 has not yet been,
oh,
is that the capital outlay article?
Has the finance committee done anything with that? Because we had kind of left that as we wanted their input.
Yeah.
That weren't they?
No,
supposed to
I'm
talk
sorry,
about
that,
last night?
okay, no, Article 3 is the transfers from free cash. The finance committee will be meeting on the 25th, Jen, to,
Can I ask a quick question before we start?
Mr. Hoffman.
Kind of to go off what Jen said, should we wait on any money articles till after the finance committee meets to see what their thoughts were on that?
We were going to hold off, I know, on Article 6. This is coming back to me now, because we took a vote to ask the Finance Committee to give a recommendation. I think they were hesitant to do that, since normally the Capital Outlay Committee does. But we really need the Finance Committee's input on this, so.
and to that extent, even, if you want to hold off on Article 3, the free cash transfers, I think that's in the same spirit.
Okay.
I know, just as a newbie, that I'd like to hear what the finance committee has to say on any of their money articles.
Of course, yeah.
don't
I
know
agree.
if That's,
So is that a motion to table Article 3 and Article 6 until we
can I
hear?
table all money articles, or do we have to
I
do
think
it
those are the only 2 money ones left, aren't they?
And the one thing I would point out is that some of these article numbers might change a little bit, so,
Okay, so let's be more specific. So we're holding off on the article, the allocation of funds from fiscal 2021 free cash, whatever that number ends up being. And we are also tabling the article on the capital improvements budget. Is that your motion, Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Go through, see if there are more, or is that?
Well, we voted on Article 5. We did not vote on Article 7 because we have not heard from the Community Preservation Committee. We held off on Article 8, which is the Plymouth Street Waterline Extension. We could actually do that, but it's still in a draft form here.
And doesn't this also affect Article 6? as well? Because I think there's a couple of things.
It does, it does. So that's 7, 8.
I do think that what's important is for the board to determine if you want that article, that draft article on the warrant at all.
Okay.
Because I can't presume that. That would be
Right, absolutely.
part of, immediately following the capital improvement budget.
Okay,
Because some of the menu here on the capital improvement budget would change a little bit. For instance, a library mechanical replacement. That wouldn't be here, it would be in the article that allows for a borrowing. Doesn't
Okay.
mean you have to borrow, you could appropriate it from. So I think to the extent that you decide you want that article on the warrant, that will change this a little bit too.
okay, so I'm willing to entertain a motion to allow this article that we now have in a draft for the Plymouth Street Waterline Library HVAC replacement and Town Hall exterior renovation to be
So-
placed on the warrant.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
My only
Mr. Belbin?
My only question is on the funding mechanism about bonding. I'm not a big fan on bonding. That's it. So I'd like possibly a alternate method of paying for this throughout bonding.
Well, wouldn't this be what our financial advisors would tell us? And I'm not talking about the finance
Are
department.
we talking about the article that allows for borrowing for the water project?
Yes.
Well, I guess the question is, how are we supposed to pay for it without bonding? That's,
Bonding is
That's why
borrowing.
we ask you, is say, all right, how would we do that? if
We
we're
wouldn't.
gonna-
We don't have the money to do that.
yeah.
And the interest rates are really low right now.
Well, I understand that, but
Madam Chair?
Mr. Townsend?
Just a quick thought on this. I think one of the best reasons for bonding this particular article, and I understand where Mr. Belbin's coming from, but we don't know the number we're going to need for that North Carver water line. So I think by bonding, we can place a high number. Doesn't mean we have to borrow it. Just means it's there if we need it, because we really don't know what that number is going to be yet. So those are my thoughts on
Yep.
that.
one last thing
No, I agree
is,
completely. Mr. Belbin?
the library replacement of the HAZMAC, does that include the roof? Would that
No.
include
No.
the place of the roof, or?
No.
No.
No, they've decided that it's, well, I'll let you tell him, Mr. LaFawn.
No, go ahead, Sarah. You're-
It's apparently almost impossible to replace the existing ones without removing the roof of the library. And so these would be new,
Yeah, it's
presumably,
a different,
perhaps
it's a
in the
different system
basement?
that can be designed, that doesn't impact the need to have to remove the existing units from where they are in
So
the,
we just keep them up there and?
But they
they'd
just
be
would-
there.
Something new, okay.
Yeah.
No, I just,
Yep,
Sure.
I must have missed that one, but that's fine, thank you.
thank you. So there's a motion and a second to allow this article to be placed in the warrant to follow the capital improvement budget.
That's this, sorry.
Oh, yes, this is our draft here, the
Yeah.
one we're talking about.
Right.
It says Article blank, Plymouth Street Waterline, Library HVAC replacement and Town Hall exterior renovation. All in favor?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
One
Hoffman.
more question. So, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds or borrow,
Or borrow, correct.
but then the proposed motion, I move that the town vote to borrow a total of $1,500,000
Right.
as follows. So,
So the way the article is written in the beginning allows us that flexibility to do it either way. I mean, raise and appropriate, it would be a debt exclusion. I doubt the
No,
town.
yeah, raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds or borrow. So it's basically providing you every option that's possible for funding a project. So the motion would be, if the choice is to borrow, that would be, the specific motion would be to do that. If it was to transfer from available funds, that would be the specific motion. So the article itself provides options.
so the proposed motion for this would be to borrow. Let's say,
That's because we're presuming that's the best way to do it, because that's what our financial advisors told us is the best way to do it.
but, so there is a, okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
That's all. But technically,
Doesn't mean you
the
have to.
informational summary is not the article.
No,
So, I
this
mean,
is-
we could change that.
Correct.
When it comes to town meeting, to have a
This
different
is me
form.
just trying to be as complete as possible in the same format that the other articles are presented.
I guess what threw me off was the proposed motion to borrow it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to borrow. That's what we can do.
Correct.
Then you stick another
Right.
word in there, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so, sure thing. Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously to add this additional way of funding these particular items. To follow the capital improvement budget article, which is Article 6. Article 7 and 7, 8. So 7 and 8 have already been tabled.
Right.
We voted to put this in inserted draft. It's in draft form now, what Rick and you were working on today. The Plymouth Street water line. And it should add the words water line in there, not just Plymouth Street, because we're not fixing Plymouth Street.
And as you can see on the warrant, Article 8 as listed, that obviously is obsolete now with your decision right now.
Correct. So there will be some modifications here. So 7 and 8 were tabled at our last meeting. Article 9 is permit conditions. I can read this to the board once. We did table these so that Mr. Belvin could be with us. Any company that receives a permit/special permit for any project on private property not owned by said company, which company subsequently sells that project, same landowner, different project owner, to another company. I know this is, I'm sorry about the wording. That second company, which now owns the project, should be required to come back to the permitting authority for renewal of said permit and reminding of the conditions of said permit/special permit. And
Madam
any
Chair?
modification.
I'm sorry. As I did in the last meeting, I'm going to recuse myself from any discussions here because this could possibly affect a project near my home. So.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. And any modifications to the original permit shall not be authorized without the consent of the landowner, and we should add or take any other action relative thereto. This was proposed to me by the chair of the Finance Committee, actually. I thought it was a good idea. It was originally based on a project that was a solar project on a landowner's property. The solar project was owned by one company. The landowner did not own it. Lots of things happened. Long and short of it was that the landowner, the whole project got approved. Landowner was very happy with it. And then it got built in an entirely different way that the landowner had no control over. I've been told by a number of people whose opinion I respect highly that this will sound as if it's just targeting this one person. I don't think it is. This sort of situation has come up a lot in town, and it occurs to me that it could come up on our at the Urban Renewal Project site as well. I know we were, that's been discussed with us, that project now is owned by company X. They might sell it to company Y. Person A may still own the land. So, I mean, this is meant to make sure everybody knows what's going on and everyone's on the same page. I have no skin in this game, so it's up to the board what you want to recommend.
I make a motion, we recommend it.
I'll second that.
Thank you, gentlemen. There's been a motion made to recommend. Any further discussion?
I noticed that I think the solar bylaw revisions later on in the warrant added a section very similar to this
Okay.
regarding solar projects specifically. We'll see it at sale or transfer of solar project. Prior to the sale or transfer of ownership and/or control operations of a solar project that has an approved site plan and special permit, the project proponent and the acquiring/receiving entity shall receive approval of the planning board for the sale or transfer. The planning board will review the decision, plans, and conditions of approval with the buyer or acquiring entity to ensure the project is constructed and maintained according to the approved site plan and special permit decision. So they have something in there specifically for solar projects.
That's good. That's
So-
good to know.
so
But this
these
is
don't-
more general.
Right, so then I just want to make sure these don't contradict each other, or are there other zoning bylaws that this should maybe be added to specifically?
Well, we can't really review all the zoning bylaws tonight, but I'm sure that council will tell us if this does contradict one of the other ones.
Okay.
I don't think it does. This is very, very general. And it's not, all it's asking really is that the company that gets, to whom the special permit is sold,
Yeah,
goes back and finds out what they're supposed to do and does it. And that the landowner should know about that. Mr. Hoffman?
I think the one that Jen just read on the solar, if I'm correct, that's when, if the project's sold, that everybody's told about that, because we had some instances where,
Okay.
company X sold to company Y, like you had just mentioned.
Right.
And nobody knew about that. So this way, I think that's what that bylaw was in reference to.
yeah.
Where this is just basically, the permitting, so it's a little bit different.
And this also says, any modifications shall not be authorized without the consent of the landowner,
Right.
which seems only right since it's on his or her land, so. Okay, that's good. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of recommending, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Article 10, Permitting Authority Bylaw. To see if the town will vote to approve the following addition to the general bylaws. Any person appointed to a permitting authority board or commission may not serve on another permitting authority board or commission. Also, any person elected to the select board, planning board, or board of health may not also be appointed to another permitting authority board or commission. Current members or more than one permitting authority at the adoption of this bylaw shall be allowed to serve out their terms on any permitting authority. If a current member is in the middle of a special permit hearing, that member will be allowed to continue to sit on the permitting authority until the hearing is closed or take any other action relative thereto.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you very much. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Article 11, Select Board Bylaw Change. Just so the public knows, the town administrator shall appoint an inspector of wires has been stricken from here. It's not relevant. New wording has been added. Select board members may not hold an appointed position to any other board or committee with authority to issue licenses or permits to residences and/or businesses. Similar to the one we just recommended. These include but are not limited to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, Earth Removal Committee, and Historic District Commission. And then the last thing was we struck the word will endeavor and added in its place the select board will avoid appointing anyone to a position who ran for it but was not elected to that position within 1 year prior to the date of the appointment.
Make a motion we approve.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Motion and second's been made. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Oh, Mr.
Just
Townsend,
a
yes.
quick question. I brought this up the first time we discussed this as well, and I guess perhaps through you, I'll ask Mr. LaFawn. Does the striking out of endeavor to on the final section mean that if there's an opening and the only person that applies to fill the opening is a previous member of that board, that we can't appoint them?
That's correct, yes.
And the idea behind that, Mark, was that if two people are running for one seat, and this happened to us once,
Well,
then it's an elected position. Person A gets elected. It hardly seems right to then turn around and appoint person B, who was also running but who lost, as like an alternate member. Or
I remember. I just wanted to make sure the board is clear that if we pass this, that the possibility exists that there could be a vacancy that we can't fill. I just
Yeah,
wanna make
I
that
see your
clear to-
point. Oh, it's a good point.
If I could just add to this, that
Yes, Mr. LaFawn.
if there's a joint appointment to fill an elected position like that. That's only until the next election, where somebody would be run to fill the unexpired term. So it is different than somebody who is elected to a 3-year term, if you're appointed to fill a seat for 1 year. I don't know if that makes a difference in your thinking, but there is a difference than with an appointed elected official. An appointed official to sit in an elected board than an elected official.
Right. That's a good point. Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just history lesson for me. What was the history or the thinking in saying a select board member can't hold a different office for a year after being on the board? Because like if a planning board member can run for select board, then how come a select board member can't run for planning board until a year after they've been out of office? What's the thinking there?
Well, I'm not precisely sure, but I believe it comes from, there's something in the state ethics laws, too, that say when you stop being a selectman, you have to wait a year before you can be X, or you can represent the town some other way. It may have come from that. Maybe, Mr. LaFawn, do you have any history on that?
It is not incredibly uncommon for someone to resign from a board in order to be eligible for an appointed position.
Okay.
So I think what this does is says, and, as an example, Mark can't resign and then be eligible to be the town administrator, at least for a year.
I see. Okay.
But just,
Well, I get that much. I
just
guess
an
my
example, yeah.
I guess my confusion was over the boards. I get the don't be a town employee part. I just wasn't sure what made the select board different, and you can go from a different elected board to here, but you can't go from here to a different elected board.
And I'm not sure. My memory is simply that it goes back to part of the ethics law. And
Okay.
the select board is singled out for that at the state level.
Okay.
Which I guess kind of makes sense if you're on the select board and all of a sudden you resign and then coincidentally you get appointed to ZBA the next week afterwards.
Yeah,
Kind of gives a year buffer.
Again,
it's-
it was more the elected part.
yeah.
So I just wasn't sure why you could go one way and not the other. So, okay.
Okay, thank you both. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of recommending the select board bylaw change, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously 5-0. Article 12, the Finance Committee bylaw change, did we held off on that, right? Yes, we tabled that. Was that for the Finance Committee too, and we wanted Mr. Belbin here as well? Did the Finance Committee vote on that? I don't recall.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so, but I'd have to double check with the chair.
So can we have a motion to table Article 12?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin. Is there a second? Okay.
Have we heard from capital outlay for number 13?
That was part of the issue. We don't currently have a capital outlay, and so the Finance Committee at our last meeting asked us to to ask the Finance Committee to give us recommendations on that,
Yeah.
on the capital outlay.
Why don't we have capital outlay anymore?
Yeah, that's, I think, Bob, you're talking about the bylaw regarding the membership.
Oh,
capital
I beg your
Right.
pardon.
So, there's been some health issues, probably.
Okay.
Did we vote to table? Did we take a vote on that?
No.
No, I need a motion to table Article 12.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. And do you second it? Yes, okay. Motion and second. All in favor of tabling Article 12?
Aye.
Say aye. Passes unanimously. Okay. Article 13, would you recommend we table this one too, Mr. LaFawn?
I don't know, I wouldn't think you would need to do that.
Okay,
And I only say this because I know I have had conversations with, and to some extent actually coordinated with the chair and another member of the Finance Committee to actually propose this.
okay.
So I don't think that you would, I mean, you can certainly wait for the Finance Committee's recommendation. On the other hand, this isn't money, this is organizational
Right,
issue for the board and the town.
okay. So what What would the board like to do?
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Is there a second? Oh, but there was a change made at the last meeting where we struck, where it says one member shall be selected by the select board and one member shall be selected by the school committee. I believe we discussed striking the word shall and inserting the word may.
Yeah, looks like that's been done here,
Yes.
so.
Just so that's on everybody's copy. Okay. So there's been a motion. Has there been a second to approve?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion and second to approve Article 13, the capital
And again,
outlay.
just keep in mind, obviously, this is still subject to council's reviewing this.
Oh, yes.
As with all articles, so,
To recommend, not to approve. I beg your pardon. We're recommending.
yes, right.
All those in favor of recommending the
Yeah.
capital outlay committee bylaw change?
Quick question.
Mr.
Vote
Hoffman.
on that. The first line that's in bold, this committee shall be a subcommittee of the finance committee. Didn't we talk about not having it called subcommittee?
Yeah, and I
Yeah, we
think that's
did.
one of the questions I posed to Greg Corbo too, because it can't be both. It's
Yeah.
either a subcommittee, which would be, again, members of that specific committee, or a different type of membership compilation. So I've expressed that to Greg to give some thought on that.
Well, so should we hold off on voting until we get that back?
I personally think we should. Hold on.
That's fine. Again, this, I think, and that would probably be the only question on here that I've seen, so, again, it's more of a, I guess, a parliamentary type question for council.
Yeah, but it makes a big difference, I think.
Well, it might be, I think it might be inconsistent with the rest of it. That's why I asked Greg to
Yeah.
think about that.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to table Article 13 as well.
Motion to table.
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor of tabling Article 13, the capital outlay committee bylaw change?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All passes unanimously, 5-0. Article 14, wetland bylaw changes. We've gone through those earlier. And approved, we approved 4-1? Is that my memory? Okay. Article 15 is the protection of recreational area in perpetuity. This is to place the new playground and recreational area located behind the town hall complex in protection of Article 97. This is not, I did not write this article, just so you're aware. It probably was written by the Recreation Committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to make a correction. The second sentence in the informational summary is incorrect. So I just wanted to explain a little bit about Article 97. It's a really good thing, but it's not for ensuring land that is acquired for recreational purposes not be converted to other inconsistent uses. That's not what it means. So Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution is hereby, wait a minute, that's it. Okay, so here's Article 97. The people shall have the right to clean air and water, freedom from excessive and unnecessary noise, and the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic qualities of their environment, and the protection of the people in their right to the conservation, development, and utilization of the agricultural, mineral, forest, water, air, and other natural resources is hereby declared to be a public purpose. So that's the essence of Article 97. Now, what Article 97 also provides is that if you want to get rid of a piece of land that's in a public purpose, such as those stated, and you could argue that other natural resources includes educational, outdoor, passive recreation, or active recreation, baseball. The only way you can take that land out of that public purpose, one of these specific purposes listed here, is by a 2/3 vote of both the local legislature and the state legislature. So it's meant to be very hard to convert the use. So I hope that we'll get that informational summary right before we put it out there, but it really is.
Right, and that, again, informational summary was not provided to us by town.
No, I
Just
understand.
something,
I didn't mean to
Sure,
imply
right.
that it was. So, Mr. Hoffman?
I was the one that started this when we asked town council on how to phrase this. Because originally when we were doing the playground, we asked to can we protect it in perpetuity?
Mm-hmm.
And then town council came back to us, and I thought they were the ones that wrote this.
I wrote it, and we did send this to town council, so it could come back completely different.
Okay. Because I know we did ask town council or through the
Right,
office.
the final.
Well,
draft,
I want it to be really clear, though, because there are future articles on this warrant that I wrote, but I'm also asking to be given Article 97 protection, and they have nothing to do with recreation, only very generally, outdoor recreation. But Article 97, the way this is written, it sounds like it's strictly limited to land that's purchased for recreation and that it can't be converted. And that's exactly the opposite of what this says. It can. It's just very difficult to convert it. It takes 2 acts of 2 legislatures and 2/3 vote of both legislatures. So it's supposed to be tough to take it out of that use, but unfortunately it can happen. But it's the best permanent protection you'll ever get. So to me, that's why it's really important, because the articles on down the line here, there's nothing wrong with saying that that's one of the protections Article 97 affords that recreational land. That's absolutely correct, but.
So are we, I guess, just to be sure, is it the informational summary in particular?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
it's the informational summary.
All right, so it's not the article itself?
No, the article's
Just have to be
fine.
clear
And-
about that.
right.
Okay.
And council may not have even looked at the informational summary, for all I know.
We will make sure that he does.
Madam
So-
Chair?
I mean, it describes the intent. It's just a matter of giving.
Well, but the second sentence is not the
you know.
correct intent, so I'll give you a copy of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bogart.
I was going to ask, this is clearly an area you know a lot in. Could you draft up an appropriate informational summary and send it
I would be glad
to Mr.
to.
LaFond?
If that's what the board would like me to do.
I'd make a motion to let Sarah write an informational summary.
I'm so annoying with
Maybe you
this
could
Article
just
97.
volunteer. That's a great idea, Jack.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second on the floor to ask me to draft an informational summary for the protection of recreation area in perpetuity. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thanks. Thank you, Mrs. Bogart.
Yeah.
I asked for that, didn't I? Okay. And now to vote on the article. Is there a motion to recommend the article?
I recommend the article to
Second.
town meeting.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion about recommending the article? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Article 16, it's another one of mine. To see if the town will vote to prohibit the building, construction, and/or permitting of any new landfill, trash dump, or fly ash facility on any property within the town of Carver, or take any other action relative thereto. Now, the Conservation Commission, I think, I'm not sure they voted on this yet, but it's on the conservation agents' plans before town meeting to have them vote on this as well. The idea behind this particular proposed bylaw is that we already have 3 landfills, 2 of which have caused severe problems for residents. They were, permitted long time ago when I guess people didn't know about such things. But I do have concerns that another one, or that a fly ash facility could pop up overnight at some property where we really don't want it to go, someplace, for example, where we'd like to see some good commercial development. And so I thought this was a good preventive measure. It protects the residents and our natural resources, including water resources as well. We may find out, though, that there might be some state regulation that says, you can't prevent them, but they have to be site controlled by the Board of Health. There may be some issues there. I don't know. But whatever is the board would like to do with this, I'll entertain a motion for discussion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin. Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion made and seconded. Is that to recommend
Recommend.
for discussion? Okay. Is there any further discussion on this?
Yeah,
Mr. Belbin?
this doesn't include a transfer station or a recycling facility here, correct?
No, it does not.
Right.
Yeah, I would never propose keeping a recycling facility out of town. No, but good question. Any further discussion?
Just
Mr. Townsend?
point of clarification, Mr. Hoffman seconded it, not Mr. Townsend.
I'm sorry. It's getting late. I beg your pardon.
No problem.
No, you're really not, so. Anyway, any further discussion? All those in favor of recommending Article 16, landfills, dumps, fly ash, and facilities prohibition, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Article 17 is the transfer of property from the Select Board to the Conservation Commission. Again, I wrote these articles. I went before the Conservation Commission on February 3rd, and they either have or will shortly vote on this at either their next meeting or the one they just had. These properties, I won't bore you with all the map and lot numbers, but I think it's more important that you know what these are. So in 2019, we were, as a board, presented with a list of properties only by their map and lot numbers. And as it turned out, the way the article was written, had they been approved at town meeting, town meeting would have been approving the town, allowing the town to sell First, Second, and Third Beach in Crystal Lake, the Bates Pond Beach in the Bates Pond neighborhood, the Wyndham Shores recreation area there, and a number of other things. So I just decided to get this out there to the public. I've tried to contact some people in these various neighborhoods to let them know what we're trying to do here. And the purpose here is right now these are in the custody of the Select Board. So the first one, map 62, lot 46, 37, and 27, are also known as First, Second, and Third Beaches in the Crystal Lake neighborhood. Map 85, lot 10, is the beaches at Bates Pond. Map 85, lot 81, is the Bates Pond neighborhood playground. I mean, I could just envision this, I can just remember it so clearly, it happening. And if a friend of mine who lives in Bates Pond hadn't told me, wait a minute, I looked that up, that's our beach. And then I looked them up, and sure enough, that's what it has. That's what it was. Map 126, lot 20 is half of Clear Pond, which was actually sold to the Conservation Commission for $1 by Buzz Arciano back in, I forget what year, 2007 maybe. And this was just a technical glitch. It just never got transferred to the Conservation Commission, but stayed in the care and custody of Select Board. The two lots mentioned on map 29 are collectively what's known as the Cole property. Those should also be, those are right now currently in the care and custody of the Select Board. I believe they should be in the care and custody of Article 97 of, Conservation. And the final two are Woodhaven Street, which is the Woodhaven Street Recreation Area, which also technically should have been in Conservation's care and custody. And believe it or not, on Savory Avenue, only about half of those lots are currently in the care and custody of Conservation, which is remarkable because I remember very distinctly they were sold to Conservation. We paid for them and they were ours. So a lot of this is sort of administrative, cleaning up that transferring of property from one to the other. The beaches were very specifically targeted by me to protect all of these things. So if this passes, once again, this will be to protect them under Article 97. So I'll just read that part. These parcels are to be retained in perpetuity in their natural, scenic, and open condition for surface water and groundwater protection, wildlife conservation, watershed protection, native habitat protection, management for biodiversity protection, associated public outdoor recreation, and other conservation and passive outdoor recreation uses consistent with the spirit and intent of and subject to the protections of Article 97 of the amendments to the Constitution. So, let's get a motion to
Okay.
approve first, and then we'll have a discussion. The
Make a
motion,
motion to approve.
recommend?
Or
Thank you.
recommend,
Thank
sorry.
you. That's all right. Thank you both. Mr. Belbin?
So on the Bates Pond, that's not really the playground itself, that's the pond.
Well, there are two lots at Base Pond.
Okay, so we're doing,
So map 85, lot 10 is known as the beaches at Bates Pond. And if you look on the assessor's map, that is actually the beach.
okay,
Map 85, lot 81 is across the street, which is their playground.
right, so why is the playground going to conservation when it should go to like recreation? Can't they?
It can. I mean, again, with this, and take any other action relative there too. Should we change that now?
I mean,
It
is the
can.
con- is the Conservation Commission gonna maintain it and,
The reason to put it in conservation is to make it Article 97 land as well. Because when you transfer that custody, then it becomes Article 97 land. It could go to the care and custody of recreation, but that doesn't have the same protection. Mr. LaFawn?
Yeah, I would, to the extent that recreation commissions, committees, I think they change over time, and depending on, 10 years, you may be a different form of government, who knows? But conservations are established pursuant to statute.
State law, that's right.
Right, so based upon that, I think that the protection is better with the Conservation Commission. No
Yep.
offense to recreation, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, so conservation commissions are established under Chapter 40, Section 8C, and that is true, and they are always charged with that kind of care and custody. Mrs. Bogart?
In Article 15, didn't we give the King property to the Recreation Committee? Should we have
We
given
didn't give it to them, we put it in Article 97 protection.
Okay, so we shouldn't have done that to the Conservation Is that different than what we're talking about now?
No, they can put it in Article 97 protection if they want, but by transferring these properties from the care and custody of Select Board to conservation, that gives them Article 97 protection, boom, just like that.
Okay, but, so in 15, it doesn't, boom, get it in Article 97. It gives them the option? I guess I
No,
thought these
no,
were
it
like the
does.
same.
It does.
So,
No, it does. They are asking to put it in Article 97 protection, but
Okay.
that's a separate issue.
oh, well, just hearing that the Conservation Commission's a safer place when we just gave, I just want to make sure that,
We didn't give it to recreation, we
Yeah.
put it in Article 97 protection. It's kind of a different,
well,
for them,
just-
we did it for them.
yeah.
okay.
Whereas by transferring the care and custody to conservation, that's an automatic protection.
Okay. I just want everything to be safe.
No, I hear you. I do too.
Okay.
That's why I did
I
this.
have a question.
Mr. Hoffman?
For some reason, I thought at the last town meeting, I don't know if it's the last or the one before that, been on the Recreation Committee for a few years, and we were basically told that we didn't even know that Bates Pond Playground was under the Recreation. And we never knew that.
It can be under, I mean, nobody's trying to take anything away from recreation.
No, what I'm saying is, I was told that it was already under the Recreation.
That's probably taking care of it and making sure the equipment is up to speed, and, because that's not a conservation thing.
Okay.
But if you wanted to have permanent protection,
Oh, I understand that, it was just, because I guess what and correct me if I'm wrong, so right now, the property is
in the care and custody of the Select Board.
the Select Board, right? And I thought we were told that last town meeting that the Recreation had care, and
Was that 2019?
that was,
It had to have been.
it wasn't, right, it was.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Well, I think this is a better idea.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, I thought that, how it came up was on the Recreation, the next day we said, we didn't even know there was a Bates Pond Playground, that.
Oh, yeah, they built it with Community Preservation Fund money.
Yeah, no, but I mean that we were in charge of the Recreation,
Ah.
and never
Yeah.
even touched that, because we didn't think it was under.
Well, the Bates Pond neighborhood may be surprised at that, too. They may think it's in their, that they're the ones supposed to take care of it, so. But I don't know that that's really the issue here.
No, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure that previously it wasn't voted on to give it to the Recreation. So are we 100% sure this is under the care and custody of the Select Board?
Yes, we are, because it says so on the assessor's card.
Okay, I thought.
I mean, as far as the assessor cards are accurate, that's what I looked at.
Okay, I'm just saying that, I know at a meeting we
yeah.
were told we had the care and custody, the Recreation Committee.
Yeah.
and care and custody.
Yeah, I would think to differentiate between more of an administrative caretaker type role versus a legal protection, because the Recreation Committee is really the Recreation Committee can't own its own property.
Right.
Conservation Commission can.
By
I think if the
statute.
town had a formal chartered Recreation Commission, it might be different.
Yeah, that would be different.
Yeah, so I think anything that's in the care and, unless it's in some sort of conservation restriction, just about anything else, if it's not school land, any other piece of town property is ultimately under the jurisdiction of the select board.
Right.
Now, if they can get recreation to take care of it,
So the care and custody, like the King property that Jen had brought up, so the care and custody of the King property is under is for recreation, correct?
No, this is,
No, I'm not saying that.
okay.
I know what Article 15 was. But I guess it's just the terminology, so care and custody. The Recreation Department is better word, in charge of that. We have to keep up the fields through
right, so, right.
O&M. But that's why I thought the care and custody of this Bates Neighborhood Playground was already of the recreation, not of the select board.
Well, maybe, I mean, we can check on that.
I'm not saying we own, the recreation owns it, because obviously they don't own it, but it's just the care and custody has already been assigned to them.
Well, it may be, but that's not what the assessor's card says.
Okay.
That's all I have to go on. I
Right,
don't,
and I don't think that would be a legal designation.
yeah.
I think, anything that's under the care and custody of the Recreation Committee is ultimately under the select board.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right.
Because the Conservation Commission's the only other entity that really can
Okay.
own land, other than the school.
We were kind of
Yeah.
surprised. that we hadn't done anything down. That's why we tried to put some other things from the old playground down there, the seesaw and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's good point, Jim. Mr. Belvin? Mm-hmm.
All right, kind of goes along with this is that some of the properties we have in town that people really don't know about that the town owns. And that there's areas of this town that, there's one on Wenham Road there, it's town-owned.
It's owned by the Conservation.
Well, it's owned by conservation, but yeah, it's conservation-owned, but no one knows anything about it. It just sits there and no one uses it.
That's why we established the Carver Trails and
I understand.
Conservation Stewards Committee.
All right.
We're working on it.
Right, so, and one of these other ones here, the ones on Woodhaven, I didn't even know about that, and I've spent tons of time looking at town properties throughout the many years here. I didn't even know about this one. And when I turned around and went on to the assessor's page to find it, I don't know if people understand how to use that, but you can go to the assessor's page, find out what the assessor record card is, what the number is for the map location. You can then go to what's called Muni Mapper, and you can go onto that site through the assessor's page, and you can actually find the location of that on the town map to see where that is. And what I found was there's a small slither, it appears, of maybe it's 10, 15 feet or whatever going in.
It's a 20-foot easement, yeah, and it
20-foot
appears on a
easement
different
that goes all
map.
the way back. And
That's the
then-
only way to get in.
Right, that's the only way
Yeah.
to get in, and I don't even know if there's a path there or whatnot. I haven't went over and looked.
It's a utility easement, so it's cleared.
It's the utility easement,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I was quite surprised about that one, but,
Well, maybe you should join our, no, I'm just kidding. We're working on it, Bob.
maybe when we leave.
We're working on it.
Maybe when I leave. But no, protection of some of these properties, I have no problem with. That's it.
Any further, Mrs. Bogart?
Third dot, it says Bait Pond Neighborhood Playground instead of Bates.
Oh, you got me.
Yeah.
We will check that. Good thing it's a draft. Thanks, Jim. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending the transfer of property from the Select Board to the Conservation Commission, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it's 5-0 to approve. Article 18 has been withdrawn because we were informed by our treasurer, who made a good catch, that this particular piece, since it's still in the care and custody of Carver Crystal Lake Association, does not although it is in tax title, it's not in tax possession yet, which means the town itself doesn't actually technically own it yet. So I just made the decision to pull that article.
Same with 19?
Yeah, Article 19, surplus property to be sold to Mass Department of Fish and Game. Read this as quickly as I can. To see if the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, management, and control of a parcel of land, Mrs. Bogart. The "of" was left out. Located at 0 Meadow Street, containing approximately 33.4 acres of land, more or less, from the purposes for which it is currently held by the Select Board to the purpose of conveyance, and further, to authorize the town to sell said all or a portion of said parcel to the Massachusetts Department of Fish and Game for the sum of not more than $20,000 pursuant to the provisions of Mass General Law, Section 30B. Said parcel to be retained in perpetuity in its natural, scenic, and open condition for wildlife conservation, native habitat protection, management for biodiversity, associated outdoor recreation, and other conservation uses consistent with the spirit and intent and subject to the protections of Article 97. So this was something that a colleague of mine at Fish and Game came to me about, and what selling this piece to Fish and Game does for the town, believe it or not, it protects an almost 600-acre swath of land stretching from Savory Avenue all the way to Meadow Street, because they now own what's called the Atwood Reservoir Wildlife Management Area, which is itself about 520 acres, that they being Fish and Game. So if these articles pass, conservation will then own all of the properties technically called the Savory Avenue Conservation Land, which is about 50 acres, and then this parcel. And the nice part of it is that they're offering to pay for it. So that is the my informational summary. Is there a motion to recommend?
I'll make a motion, we recommend.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Motion made and seconded to recommend. Any further discussion?
And just
Mr. Belvin?
thing is the payment from the Mass Fish and Wildlife, just to let people know that it's not like the government's giving money to pay for this land. They get their money from the hunters that purchase hunting licenses, the hunters that purchase firearms and ammunition and hunting gear, stuff like that. That's where the money comes from. So and right now that they want to increase the fees, just an FYI, for hunting licenses and permits. So, like I said, the hunters, they come back and they give back to this country and this town and the state. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Belvin. That's correct. Okay, any further discussion?
Sarah,
Motion?
can we have a little clarification here?
Yes.
Going from Article 16 and
I'm sorry?
Article 16 on page 11.
Could you say what it's about rather than the number?
Yes, it's Article
Landfill dumps.
18, surplus property to be sold to Mass Department of Fish and Game.
Well, we have it as Article 19.
Okay,
I do, anyway.
okay.
No, I have it as 18.
I have it as 8.
Okay,
I have
well,
it as 18
anyway,
as well.
the article that says surplus property to be sold to Mass Department of Fish and
Right,
Game.
which article were you referring to that had to be
Withdrawn.
withdrawn?
I'm sorry, the article, and I sent an email, I think, to you guys.
It's been updated, though, the one in your packet.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm probably not looking at the updated
Oh,
one.
okay.
right.
I beg your pardon, this is the one that I had my notes on. So it was the transfer of property from Crystal Lake Association to the Conservation Commission. I think you guys already withdrew that.
I'm sorry,
Okay, so that was 17, which doesn't exist.
Okay,
That's why there's a gap here.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that was withdrawn then.
All right, just want
Yeah,
to make
I
sure.
beg your pardon. Okay. Was that,
that was withdrawn at the last meeting. So this has been updated since the last meeting. It was sent
Okay.
to you in the
Right.
packet as the updated draft.
my fault? I beg your pardon. Okay, so we're back to surplus property to be sold to Mass Department of Fish and Game. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of recommending?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously, 5-0 to recommend.
So that's the new Article 18.
Yes, I should probably get,
Yes.
but I'm
Yes.
working on my old one. I had to
Yeah.
where I have my notes, so that's
Yeah.
why I'm not saying article numbers.
Okay.
The next article is Picnic Isle Land Acquisition by Eminent Domain.
Make a motion, we approve?
Second.
Discussion? I'm going to just quickly say for the residents who live in the Wenham Shore neighborhood, this is a good thing. This was recommended to us by our financial people, our land use lawyer, as well as for financial reasons as well, because the only way to really protect this land, the best way, is to take it by eminent domain. It's an island, sits in the middle of Wenham Pond, and unfortunately, if we did it any other way, such as auction, someone could pay the taxes and subsequently perhaps purchase it. So we want to keep it in Article 97 protection. So this will do that. Mrs. Bogart.
In the title of the article, Isle spelled wrong.
You're tough. I don't feel as bad now. It's not
It's a good
just,
thing we have her
not
around,
just
right?
me that's getting beat up here tonight.
Oh, that's good.
Wasn't there, isn't that like the name of it? There was a discussion about that, the
So-
name of it.
Yeah, so are you talking about the last town meeting? So what happened at last town meeting is that the town meeting voted to put both the Wenham Shores Recreation Area and Picnic Isle into a conservation restriction to be held by Mass Fish and Game, same thing. However, subsequent to that meeting, we found out that, whoops, Picnic Isle was not in our tax possession. It was still owned by this McGuire Development Company, who has long since disappeared, to the best of the town's knowledge. And so our land use lawyer highly recommended that we go for eminent domain, just as the quickest and easiest way to make sure that that conservation town meeting article, the conservation restriction that was voted last year, can be put in place. So that's a further protection. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, motion passes to recommend unanimously. Article 21, this is to ask the town if they will vote to accept a donation of 6 parcels of the Great South Meadow Cedar Swamp from Mr. Roger W. Shores. Totaling...
It's our Article 20.
Article 20.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Here we go. This totals, I had added it up at 1 point, 6 and 6 and 8 and 12 and 6 and 1 acre. It's roughly, it's 40-some acres. And this gentleman came to me and asked, was there a way he could donate this land to the town? I offered to write the article, so that's where that come from. Is there a motion, and is there a motion to recommend this to
Motion
the?
to recommend.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just.
Mr.
wondered,
Belvin.
How many other parcels out there that are still outstanding for the town to take over
In the Cedar Swamp?
in the Cedar
Well, the
Swamp?
problem is, there's some that are in tax title and they have to go to tax possession, or it just takes time. You have to give a property owner a long period of time before you can take their property. So, but this was a donation.
Right.
So, I know there's a lot, but the town owns about 200 acres in the Cedar Swamp.
Well, I know we own a lot, but there's still a bunch of little
Oh, yeah.
slithers out there that
Yep, I know.
still outstanding.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor of this article, recommending this article?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0 to recommend. Okay. Now, the rest are zoning articles. What is the board's wish to do with these? Do you want to go through these, or do you want to take no action?
I have some
We're
issues with
listed,
some.
we might as well take action.
Do you want to go through all of these?
Yeah.
Well, we have to read them all out of what they are, but I mean, I think that we should have the ability to have some questions about some of them, and just go through it that way.
All right, I'll wait for someone to point out a zoning article that they want to discuss and have us vote on.
Well, I have some questions about, not that I want to vote on it, but the sign one, I'd like to just ask a question if we know the answer.
This is the signed bylaw that,
That's like so
I'll
many
make a
pages long.
motion to discuss the sign bylaw.
that's the one that goes for 8 pages?
Yeah.
Okay. Can we discuss it then?
Without a vote? Can we discuss it without a vote?
Yeah, you can. You can't vote on it without a vote.
Right.
Can we make how can we make an amendment, and it's an easy amendment, and we can't at all?
No.
No, this is the plan, these are planning board articles.
I know, there's just one thing that we had talked about in that zoning bylaw thing, the name change you brought up, and it looks like it wasn't made. So we can discuss it, I'm just bummed we can't change it, because,
Well, if it's just an administrative
Yeah.
clerical type issue, then that's word processing. If you're talking about, the intent, then a
no, not at all.
different issue. If you're just talking about,
This was a definitional, and it was intent.
Yeah,
okay, so it's substantive then.
Yes.
Okay, so that would presumably have to be part of a motion at town meeting.
okay. Can I just tell you is there some way that I can just tell you what I'm talking
Sure.
about?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was in 3524 enforcement. I remember we talked about it at one of the zoning bylaw committee meetings. It says the zoning enforcement officer is designated as the sign officer, and then in 3525, it says the building commissioner. And I remember at one of the meetings, you had suggested just clearing up the name. Did we want to call it the building, because there's 3 titles there?
Well, actually, a building commissioner is this town zoning enforcement officer.
And because I remember you had said, let's clean it up, because there's so many names. So as long as that gets back to your point at that committee meeting, great.
Yep, thank
'Cause I
you.
remember you made a point. Excellent.
My
Mr. Belvin?
My suggestion for that would be is that a section be added and say that the building commissioner is the zoning enforcement officer, and actually give a definition of what his job title is.
Well, see, here's the problem. Since these aren't our articles, we can't do that.
No, I know, I'm just putting it out there that maybe the planning board can listen to this and say, hey, well, maybe, yeah, we should really define what the building commissioner's roles is.
Okay, well, this is why I think I have no problem discussing these,
No, and I think
but I really
that's-
don't think we can make any recommendations.
Right, and I
We
think
can't.
that the role and job description requirements of a building commissioner, that's for a position description, more so
Right.
than
That's
this, because that could change. Now, the zoning enforcement officer, that is the building commissioner. However, it's not out of the question that the town could someday hire a zoning enforcement officer. Now, he or she would work under the jurisdiction of a building commissioner. So I don't know if you want to get too tight with this. I think you
Well,
wanna
we
be-
can't really make any changes
But
anyway.
I just think, okay, fair enough. I just think that there's more, I don't want to overthink it.
Right.
Because, realistically, whether you're the zoning enforcement officer, who's also the building commissioner, or a separate, it covers it, you know what I'm saying? And
I do.
a position description for a building commissioner could address this.
Yep.
Right.
So my feeling, again, I'm going to say this again, is I think we need to take no action, and that although if you want to talk through them at our next meeting, maybe that's a better time to do that, because it's important for people to hear what you think. But then for minor changes, or not necessarily minor, but for specifically the one you were talking about, Jen, where it's the definition of,
I just wanted to make sure all those titles matched.
and that one too. I mean, that could also be brought up at town meeting.
Right, but I mean, we have on our agenda discussion and possible vote, so, I mean, a time warrant articles, so it allows us to discuss it, I mean, and.
You can, that's just my recommendation, because
I
there's
know.
no way we can really change them. So if you don't like how it's phrased, it seems to me that you'd have to vote against it.
Well, most definitely, I mean, it's the fact that I think we should discuss these, and people have an opinion, and let people know what our opinions are on these.
That's why we're here.
An opportunity.
I just have one quick thing that maybe we can answer both yours.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I agree with Bob, and Jen, we should discuss it, but maybe take your advice and take no action.
Right.
And then at the town meeting, we can say why we didn't take any action, because of the inconsistency with or we wanted to try to have those two titles identified.
Yeah.
But we should discuss, as long as we're here,
Oh,
we
yeah.
should discuss
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And get everybody's opinion. I agree.
And my issue with that was the same thing, was similar to who has control of enforcing of it. And so, thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Yep, thank you for that. Anything else in the signed bylaw?
No.
So, what's next?
We have 22. Replace section, large-scale solar.
Sorry?
Large-scale solar.
Oh, yes, okay.
Article 22.
Any discussion on
Yes.
large-scale ground-mounted solar?
One quick,
Mr. Townsend, I mean, Mr. Hoffman, I know who you are.
are we gonna vote to take no action on it?
Yes,
You want to do that?
why don't we do that
Okay.
for the signed bylaw?
I make a motion, we take no action on the signed bylaw.
Second.
Motion's been made and second to take no action on the signed bylaw. Any further discussion?
I just have again, newbie question. I know it's a zoning bylaw change, which tends to be under it's the jurisdiction of the planning
It
department.
is a jurisdiction of the
Yeah.
planning board.
But why wouldn't we just, as a select board, why wouldn't we kind of get our feelings and opinions out there for town meeting, just to know they elected us, so why
That's what
wouldn't
we're
we let them
doing
know?
here, that's what we're doing here.
But to take no action, so like at town meeting, it wouldn't be.
We can explain why we took no action at town meeting.
But why wouldn't we?
Well, take no action means we didn't vote to approve, sorry.
Yeah,
We didn't vote to approve,
Right, why,
we didn't vote to recommend it,
we didn't vote to recommend or not to recommend.
yeah, why would we not do that?
because we have questions that we can't answer because.
And we can't change it.
Oh, okay,
We
got it,
can't change
okay.
it.
Yeah.
It's not on our authority to change these, yeah. Okay, there's motion made and seconded to take no action on the solar bylaw, not solar bylaw, sign bylaw. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously to take no action. Article 22 is the large-scale ground-mounted anyway, installation. Any discussion there?
Yes.
Mr. Belvin?
Under 3580.10, the bold, what they added in, it used to be that anything 1 acre would be under this. Now it comes in, it actually says less than 250 kilowatts and/or covering less than 1 acre of land do not need to comply with this section. So that means we have you live on 2 acres of land, then you can turn around and make one of those acres all solar, all right? And that could really impact your neighbors and property values and everything if you don't have to do screening or anything for it. I think that's dangerous in our town. Plus with certain smaller cranberry bogs, that they could turn around and put those up and not have to have any screening around our town and still turn around and do this. I think this is really dangerous for our town, for a whole lot of smaller solar all around our town. And people want rural character. Well, I don't think this is gonna be rural character. Allowing this with no screening, no nothing. I mean, there's one thing about putting it on top of a roof on a residential area. But when you turn around and you say, well, I have this big field on the side of my property and I'm gonna put all solar up there, and you know what? On Main Street, go down Main Street and there's a couple of properties right there that have large open areas, and well, I'm gonna put solar in there, and how is that gonna affect our town? And some of the smaller neighbors, hey, if they don't have a good relationship with their neighbors, well, I'm gonna put a big solar farm right on the side of my 1 acre, less than 1 acre of land, right next to my neighbor's property. Plus, my other issue I have with this is, does this include, we have build-out maximum on residential area of 30%. Is this included in it, or is this accessory structure that is not included in it? So, I mean, there's some clear issues with this. All right, so I would never allow this, and I wish we had somebody here to turn around and say, hey, why are you putting this in here? Why are you exempting this? Okay,
Bless you.
so I have some real issues with this.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. Anybody else?
Quickie, here comes the typo police again.
Okay.
In the new table of dimensional requirements, minimum setbacks when solar project abuts a bog or other agricultural use, minimum has 2 M's in the middle, and it should only have 1.
Thank you, Mrs. Bogart.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the large-scale ground-mounted solar projects, Article 22? No? Is there a motion to take no action on this?
I'll make a motion, we take no action.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin. For a second, Mr. Townsend, thank you. All in favor of taking no action, please say aye.
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 Passes 5-0 to take no action. Okay. Let's see what we have next. Okay, Article 23, solar canopies. Any discussion about this article?
Again, me.
Mr. Belbin?
I mean, we go to the rural character, and are these part of a rural character of the town of Carver for these solar canopies? And, I mean, I don't see this. I don't see this as a rural character to help our town. I mean, will it help the town if we put them in the elementary school or the high school parking lot, and where we can get some money for that or whatnot, some energy credits or whatnot? But really, is this what we want in our town? I don't like this. So, I mean, I drive by, and I think people can take a vision of this, is if you drive by N-Star in Plymouth, they have some over there, pretty big for their thing. And I think there's another one with a car dealership in Plymouth too, that they did across from the old Shaw's. I think they have some too. But you really want to take a look at some, and really, like I said, I don't think that's the rural character of our town.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Belbin. Anyone else? Mr. Hoffman?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is this just for town-owned properties?
That's,
Yes.
that's what it says, yes.
So this wouldn't be for, because my understanding, we voted on, we voted this in 2019
Mm-hmm.
over town. Okay, so this basically is just allowing the solar companies a second principal use so that any electrical power generated may be sold to the electrical grid. The power generated cannot be used locally due to existing power agreements. I think the example that was used, say if the new police station, we put canopies and we already have an agreement for a power agreement in place, they could sell that new energy, the new power. Correct.
Well, it depends. If, I think one of the, Carver has a 3 net metering agreements, and in a net metering agreement is where you basically sell your capacity to a net metering company, and that net metering company, who basically through tax incentives, rebates you a portion of your energy cost. That's the simplistic way to put it. It's very confusing. So you can't oversell your electricity to a net metering firm. So you have to have the capacity. If we're at a point where we don't have any capacity left to sell, we're already using close to 100% getting our energy through net metering agreements, you're out of capacity. So what could happen here is that a developer would be able to more or less sell it, to the grid. That would be generally how it would happen. But I haven't reviewed our net metering agreements in that depth to know that. But I think something like this, I know you're starting to see them more and more, especially with new facilities where you might have a canopy or some other garage style, hate to say it, almost like a lean-to next to your house for a garage, where you keep your vehicles. So you get your vehicles, under a roof, so you don't have to go push the snow off before you shift. And you also have a solar canopy, so presumably you're maybe making town might be making a little bit of money off that too. So that's the kind of examples you're starting to see for some of these. Now, is that something you want to look at? I don't know. Is it worth the, the potential revenue for what you have to look at? Well, that's a policy decision.
Well, and it does say in this article, under
It's up to this board.
locations,
anyway.
proposed locations shall be approved at town meeting. So, that's some kind of protection.
Well, and this board, other than through a petition article, would have to be willing to put it to town meeting for a vote.
Correct. And it says, in addition, the board, commissioner, department controlling a land-owned property shall approve of any proposal under its jurisdiction. So if this board didn't approve it, it wouldn't get approved,
So
presumably.
you might like the concept, but you never agree with a particular location or project, so it
Right.
never goes anywhere.
Right. Any other discussion?
No, this would just give the option to have this. But again, like you had just said, we could always not approve anything brought to us.
Right,
But at least it gives the option.
correct,
I know one of the instances they used was with the buses, the bus depot.
right,
where
on
that's
Pond
off-
Street, yeah.
On Pond Street, right, that's
Yeah.
off you don't really see it as much, but if they want to do it at the new police station, you don't want to see it driving by, the board can just say no.
Yeah, yeah, plus it has to get approved at town meeting, too,
In the
so
town meeting.
the location itself, yeah.
I'll make a motion, we take no action.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded to take no action. Any further discussion? All in favor of taking no action, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Article 24, floodplain district.
I'll make a motion, we take no action.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to take no action on the floodplain district. Further discussion?
I just want to let people know that this was supposed to be put on our town meeting last year, I think it was.
That's
And
correct.
it was pulled because of the COVID,
Right.
and it just brought back so we can get this up and running. I don't know if there was a time frame that we were supposed to get it done by.
I think it was. They didn't have a time for their public hearing about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Belvin. Okay. And, so that's the new Article 24. Yeah, the motion's been made and seconded to take no action on the floodplain district bylaw. All in favor say yes?
aye.
Aye. No opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously to take no action on Article 24. Article 25, single-family cluster development.
Make a motion, we take no action.
Is there a second? I'm sorry, was there a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion made and seconded to take no action.
Discussion?
Discussion?
I would implore everyone watching or here, go back and watch the zoning bylaw review committee meetings. They will be eye-opening as related to this bylaw because of the amount of inclusion and participation that one developer had with the crafting of this bylaw.
Correct.
So please go back and watch the history of this because the zoning bylaw committees was not super favorable on this. So just
Actually-
please go watch the meeting.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's an understatement. The zoning bylaw review committee voted unanimously to recommend they not put this on the warrant, that the planning board not put this on the warrant. This is the single-family cluster development.
So please watch those meetings.
I would also like to add to watch
Mr.
the
Hoffman.
latest planning board meeting, because this was brought up after the zoning bylaw, and a lot of those things were explained that were taken up. So it was very interesting to see.
Yeah,
To get the whole story, you should watch the planning board meeting as well.
yeah,
Can I ask an administrative question?
certainly.
I'm getting information. Did the planning board recommend to withdraw this bylaw from the warrant? This is going to you two.
That has not been forwarded to us if there
No.
was a vote to do so.
Okay,
Received their recommendations last week.
okay. Thank you.
Right, they had made some amendments, I thought, to that.
I was under the impression they were going to withdraw it, but maybe that's just because our bylaw committee recommended that, at any rate.
Just,
Mr.
I
Albert.
thoroughly agree, because, I mean,
With who?
with both my cohorts here, is that
Yeah.
you gotta watch some of these meetings. I mean, number one, they're informative, but coming up to town meeting and when you have a developer that crafts a bylaw and, or assists in crafting the bylaw, all right, you're gonna have some.
Could I just interrupt real quickly?
Yes.
I'm informed by Elaine that the planning board has not forwarded a recommendation, so whether or not they've
Okay.
considered it or whatever the case is, but they have not made a recommendation yet, so.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to take no action on Article 25, the single-family cluster development. Any further discussion? All those in favor of taking no action, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, passes 5-0 to take no action. Article 26, non-medical marijuana overlay district. Any discussion? Is there a motion to take no action on Article 26?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
I have one.
Mr. Belbin?
With this is, I liked having a North Carver and South Carver overlay districts where they're kind of separated to an extent, and through talking to a few people is that it's kind of putting all our baskets in one little area and to separate it. So I've had a change of heart on this whole subject of saying, all right, splitting them up is not a good idea. But one of my concerns is that some of the people that their lots now are now changed over from one zoning area to another, that, have they all been notified? Have these property owners been notified that this is now overlay district has been changed?
Well, that would, I don't know the answer, but that would have been and should have been done prior to the planning board public hearing.
Right, that's, I mean.
I imagine they were, but I don't know. So.
I said, I would have thought that for something like this, I mean, it's like, if you go before the zoning or planning and you're gonna do something to your property, you send a notice to the neighbors, say, hey, this is what's going on, but I don't think they're actually doing that. We do that as a town when you have zoning
If
changes.
it's a pub, well, I don't want to make accusations here, but it's proper procedure to inform people of that sort of thing.
Just my thought process on that.
So is there a motion and a second to take no action on the medical marijuana district bylaw?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Motion's been made and second. All in favor of taking no action, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. It's 5-0 in favor of taking no action on Article 26. Article 27, definitions of townhouse. Any discussion here?
Yeah, like I said, I had discussions on this. I went to the meeting for it, and the way they've made the changes, I think are fine. Said I wish we had definitions that are a little more clearer of what's included in a unit, of what's specific, but it is what it is.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin. Any
I'll make a
other,
motion, we take no action?
Second.
any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so this January 20th, 2021, go watch that zoning bylaw committee meeting because it talks about the townhouse.
Correct. Although this is changed up to 2 again.
Yeah.
Mr. Hoffman?
I just have a question. Wasn't the last planning board meeting, didn't they change that? for at least 2, but not more than 5? Because the project in question had a single unit, and didn't they, I thought the board took out at least 2 and put not more than 5 was the recommendation.
They have not forwarded a recommendation to us.
Yeah, this
So
one.
watch
they
the
did.
last planning board meeting.
This one, on this one, they did recommend, they forwarded their recommendation with the updated change, and this
Oh,
is
they
the
did.
updated.
Oh, this is the update.
This is a update change.
Yeah.
Good, that's good.
Thank you, Elaine, yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's what they voted on.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to take no action on Article 27, definitions of a townhouse. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of taking no action on this article, please say aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed, that passes 5-0 to take no action. Thank you all for that. Town administrator update?
Yes. Quickly as I can here. CARES Act, nothing new. We have got the 7 applications in, actually plus an 8th one for Old Colony of Otech. And we hopefully, if you heard Meg LeMay at the last meeting, we'll have 3, 4, and 5 reviewed and completed by the end of March. And again, we have about about $1.4 million in change in submitted with our applications. Budget process update, I'm not going to dwell on it, other than the 25th, the Finance Committee will be meeting, and they're going to be looking at the capital outlay program, making recommendations, and on a free cash article. I don't know, I assume that the chair has it scheduled also to make some recommendation on their proposed updated Finance Committee article.
Got a quick question on
Sure.
that before we move on. Will the Finance Committee and Select Board be meeting again after their meeting, or to give us their recommendations, or how does that work?
That's up to the boards. It would certainly be helpful to meet one more time before town meeting. And I lost my track here, Jim. What have you done to me here?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. CARES Act update. One thing I didn't mention, not so much CARES Act, but in terms of COVID vaccinations, Mike Ryan, as you know, has been giving occasional updates, and effective tomorrow, actually today and tomorrow, they were administering a number of vaccinations locally for housing authority residents and others there were other categories, classifications of people who apply, who are applicable also. And tomorrow, they'll be doing at the dispensary location at our high school, using very strict criteria. Also, probably doing about 75 more of the 100 that were vaccinations that were provided by the state. So once again, hats off to Mike for his tenacious effort on behalf of the town. And speaking of that, I do want to point out that tomorrow, and you probably, is a St. Pat's pickup corned beef and cabbage dinner drive-through at the COA. And you may be aware, I don't know if you've got the notice, but let me just real quickly point out that Mamma Mia's is providing the luncheon for pickup. And the cost is $10, as it always has been. So this is, and Mamma Mia's is covering the remainder of the costs of the actual meal. So nice donation from Mamma Mia's. And certainly, I think it's a nice way for the COA to partner with local businesses. My understanding is that Madeline, help me out, Madeline. Joyce, thank you. Sorry, Madeline, if you're listening. Her relationship she's established over the years, fundraising, was really helpful to build some of these relationships with establishments. So again, just want to thank Mamma Mia's for their participation, and this may be a good model for going forward. It's certainly not uncommon. The other thing I would like to point out is that recently there was a health inspection at down at the COA, and there's no notable sanitary or other issues, actually none, not notable. But larger than that, I think, I don't know if anybody's been down there. I've mentioned in the past how much effort is being put down there under Connie's leadership. I mean, she's really done a great job in June, but particularly, ceilings, floors, walls being painted. I was down there the other day, and it's getting close for everybody's eyes. So it would be nice if in the next couple of weeks, maybe the board members can get down there and take a look. Just really a whole different atmosphere when you walk through those doors. In addition, our buildings and grounds, our O&M has taken a look down there, and again, Connie she's quite tenacious at times. And they're going to be, O&M is going to be installing new lighting fixtures and cabinetry in the kitchen, as well as a new sink, dishwasher, etc. So Connie's pushing hard to get her resources out of the town. And obviously, her board's very supportive. So I just want to compliment them on their effort, and hopefully, in the near future, people can go down and take a look around once they feel comfortable. So, that being said.
And on that note, I wanted to remind the board members that Connie Kelly, the director of the COA, has invited us to be down there as greeters, if anyone's able to.
That's right. I forgot that.
Outdoor greeters from 11 to 12. So anyone's able to do that. Great.
So, good things happening.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. LaFawn.
And I have one other matter, which is not necessarily for tonight. I have a memo here from Jim Walsh, and there's a property owner, 4 Copper Lantern Lane in Unit 4, who's seeking to refinance her home. And the home is affordable housing under Chapter 40B, so-called local incentive program. So the house has been approved to be in that program through special permit. So anytime there's any change in property status, the select board has to vote to approve it. In this case, it's simply a refinancing of that by the owner. The closing's on, I believe, March 29th, so you will not have another meeting between then and now. I think you might want to consider whether or not the board is willing to have a quick meeting just to approve this refinance before that time. It's certainly not this person's fault, or certainly Jim Walsh, that this has come to our attention late. So if we could, I'll be hitting you up to see if it's a possibility of at least getting a majority at the board together to post the meeting over the next week or so.
You're talking a morning meeting, a short 10 minutes?
I'll be here, so whatever works for the board. So I just want to point that out, and
Thank you.
should have finished with COA, I know, a little melody. Anyway.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. LaFawn.
I am done.
Mr. Belvin?
Kind of go along with that. What we talked about earlier, maybe include an executive session, if that comes into play.
Perhaps, that depending on people's availability. Maybe
Okay. That was mysterious. That's okay. Minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 6, 2021. Everyone's on board with that. Select Board community announcements. We'll start with Mr. Townsend.
Thank you. Let's see. The Carver High School class of 2024 is sponsoring a Little Caesars pizza fundraiser. For a small donation, you can get a complete pizza kit sent right to your door. So you can get more information from the middle high school or on the Little Caesars fundraising website. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Mr. Hoffman?
I'm all set for now.
Thank you. Mrs. Bogart?
Pass.
Pass?
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Belvin?
Yeah, I just want to let people know, as more people get vaccinated, it's still very important you do wear your mask. Just because you get a shot doesn't mean you're immune from it. You still have the possibility, and just be vigilant out there. Let people understand that distance is still good and the masks still work, but we don't know how long the vaccines actually last for. Everybody's different. Your immunity's different. So some, it may be immune for a long period of time, some are short. But the masks is the best way to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. And there are no select board notes tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Have a good night.